There is a river, and it is the river of life. Its current flows without pause. From a source we cannot see to a destination we do not know, most of us find ourselves in this river, thrashing, struggling to swim against the current, trying to return to a past that no longer exists, and we become exhausted, or we simply give up and are swept away in the torrent, tossed about by the chaos of waves, losing all sense of direction, our heads barely above the water. This feeling is a familiar one. It is the quiet ache of being stuck, the low hum of anxiety that underscores our days, and the profound weariness that settles deep within our bones. We feel trapped in a cycle, a relentless loop of thoughts that pulls us back into the ghosts of yesterday and pushes us forward into the phantoms of tomorrow. We live anywhere but here, and we find peace nowhere. This suffering, this deep sense of unease, is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken. It is a fundamental part of the human experience, a universal truth felt by countless souls throughout time. But what if there was another way to navigate this river, not a way to escape it? For the river is life itself, but a way to learn how to glide with its current, to surf its waves with a sense of balance, and to find a deep, unshakable peace even in the midst of its most turbulent waters. This way is not a new invention. It is an ancient path, illuminated by the wisdom of those who have walked it before. It is found within the teachings of the Buddha, offered not as a rigid dogma to be believed, but as a practical science of the mind, a profound art of living. It is a path that does not ask you to become someone else, but invites you to return to who you truly are, beneath all the noise and the struggle. It begins with learning to use a few simple, yet powerful tools. A compass for the soul. These tools are the practice of letting go, the cultivation of mindfulness, and the awakening of a clear, gentle awareness. This is an invitation to begin a journey inward, a journey to transform suffering not by fighting it, but by understanding it. It is a journey to discover that the peace we so desperately seek on the outside has been waiting for us, patiently, on the inside, all along. Let us begin our journey by exploring one of the most powerful and often most destructive forces we experience. It is a fire that can ignite in an instant, a venomous serpent that strikes from the shadows of the mind. It is the raw, untamed energy of anger. We have all felt its heat, the flush in our cheeks, the tightening in our chests, the thunder in our ears that drowns out all reason. We are taught to fear it, to suppress it, to feel ashamed of it. We see it as an enemy, a flaw in our character that must be vanquished. But the wisdom of the path teaches us to look at it differently. It asks us not to fight the fire, but to understand its nature. It invites us to sit with this burning guest, to listen to what it has to say, and in doing so, to transform its destructive heat into the warmth of wisdom. There is an old story that illuminates this path. A great monk, known for his unshakable tranquility, was meditating in a quiet grove. A man from a nearby village, whose life was filled with frustration and misery, heard of the monk's profound peace and became intensely jealous. He decided he would go and shatter that peace. The man stormed into the grove and stood before the silent monk, unleashing a torrent of the most vile and hateful words he could conjure. He insulted the monk's appearance, his practice, his ancestors, his very existence. The monk, however, remained perfectly still, his eyes gently closed, his breath steady. He simply sat and listened, offering the man the gift of his silent, unwavering presence. The man grew more and more enraged by this lack of reaction. He screamed until his throat was raw. His face was purple with fury, and he was completely exhausted. When his rage was spent and silence returned to the grove, the monk slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the man with a gaze full of understanding and asked softly, "My friend, if you buy a gift for someone and that person does not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, taken aback by the question, stammered, "Well, it would belong to me. Of course, I bought it." The monk smiled gently and said, "Exactly. And so it is with your anger. You came here today and offered me the gift of your anger and your insults. I have chosen not to accept it. It still belongs to you." This story holds the key to the first gate of freedom. Anger, directed at us from the outside world, is only a gift. It is an offering of poison. We are conditioned to believe that when someone offers us this poison, we must drink it. We must become angry in return. We must defend ourselves. We must feel the sting of the insult. But we always have a choice. We do not have to accept the gift. The anger of another person is their own creation, born from their own suffering, their own misunderstanding. It belongs to them. By choosing not to receive it, we do not add our own suffering to theirs. We remain free. This is not an act of passivity or weakness. It is an act of immense strength and wisdom. It is the recognition that our inner peace is too precious to be handed over to the whims of another person's unhappiness. But what of the anger that arises from within, the serpent that is born in our own heart? This is the more intimate challenge. Here too, we must learn to see it not as our intrinsic self, but as a visitor, a powerful energy passing through. When anger arises, our first instinct is to become it. We say, "I am angry." The wisdom of practice invites a subtle but profound shift in language and perception. It encourages us to say, "I feel anger," or "Anger is present within me." In that small space between I am and I feel lies our freedom. We are no longer the fire. We are the space in which the fire is burning. We are the vast, open sky. And anger is a dark, passing storm cloud. The sky is not afraid of the cloud. It does not fight the cloud. It simply allows the cloud to be there, knowing that it, too, shall pass. To understand how to do this, we must look at the roots of anger. Where does it come from? Anger is almost always a secondary emotion. It is a mask for a deeper pain. It often arises from a collision between our expectations and reality. We carry around in our minds a secret rule book for how life should be, how people should behave, how our plans should unfold, when reality violates our rulebook, when someone cuts us off in traffic, when a loved one disappoints us, when our efforts do not lead to success, anger erupts as a violent protest. It is the cry of a frustrated ego, the part of us that believes it should be in control of the uncontrollable. It can also be a reaction to fear, a way to feel powerful when we feel vulnerable, or it can be the voice of a deep sadness that we do not know how to express. The practice, then, is to become a compassionate investigator of our own inner world. When the heat of anger begins to rise, the first step is to simply acknowledge it, without judgment, without shame. Ah, there you are. Anger, I see you. Then, bring your awareness to the body. Where do you feel it? Is it a tightness in the jaw, a burning in the stomach, a pounding in the head? Just observe these physical sensations as pure energy. Do not attach a story to them yet. Just feel them, breathe into them. By focusing on the raw, physical energy, you stop feeding the mental story that keeps the anger alive. As you sit with the energy, you can then begin to gently ask, what is beneath this? What is this anger protecting? Is there a feeling of being disrespected? A feeling of being unseen? Unheard? Is there a fear of loss? Is there a deep sadness? You are not trying to analyze it away, but to bring the light of gentle awareness to its source. The antidote to the fire of anger is the water of compassion. And this compassion must first be directed at yourself. You can place a hand on your heart and offer yourself the kindness you would offer a crying child. You can say to yourself, it is okay to feel this way. This is a moment of suffering. May I be gentle with myself. Only when you have offered yourself this compassion can you begin to extend it outward, to see the person who was the source of your anger not as a monster, but as another suffering being. Their hurtful words or actions did not arise from a place of peace and happiness. They arose from their own ignorance, their own pain, their own unmet expectations. This does not mean you condone their behavior or that you must become their best friend. It simply means you understand that they, too, are trapped in their own suffering. In wishing them to be free from that suffering, you perform the ultimate act of self-liberation. You release yourself from the chains of resentment and hatred that bind you to them. You refuse to carry their poison for them any longer. This is how we tame the serpent, not by trying to kill it, for its energy is a part of life, but by ceasing to feed it our fear and our ignorance. We learn to let it arise, to observe its nature without being consumed by it, and to meet its fiery energy with the cooling waters of wisdom and compassion. We transform the visitor from a destructive intruder into a wise teacher, a messenger who points us directly to the places in our heart that are most in need of our love and attention. As we practice this, the fire that once threatened to burn down our inner house becomes the gentle flame that illuminates our path. Once we begin to understand the fire of anger, we often notice another, more subtle heat, the slow burn of attachment, the clinging to what we desire, and the aversion to what we dislike. This is the next layer we must explore on our journey inward. Having looked into the bright, consuming fire of anger, we now turn our attention to a different kind of heat. It is not a sudden blaze, but a slow, persistent burn. It is the quiet fever of attachment, the subtle but powerful force of clinging that shapes our lives in ways we rarely perceive. Imagine your heart is connected to the people, possessions, and ideas you cherish by invisible threads. Some are thick as ropes, others fine as silk. We believe these threads are lifelines, sources of our security and happiness. We spend our lives strengthening them, protecting them, fearing their severance. But the wisdom of the path reveals a startling truth. These threads are not lifelines. They are chains. They are the golden bars of a cage we have built for ourselves. A cage that feels comfortable and safe, but a cage nonetheless. This clinging, this desperate grasp on what we love, and this forceful pushing away of what we dislike, is the very root of our deepest dissatisfactions. It is the invisible burden we carry through every moment of our lives. The nature of this burden is beautifully illustrated in the story of two Zen monks on a long journey. One was a senior monk, wise and serene. The other, a junior monk, diligent but still rigid in his thinking. Their path led them to a river with a strong current. On the bank stood a young woman in a beautiful silk kimono, distressed because she could not cross without ruining her fine clothes. The junior monk, strictly adhering to the monastic rule not to touch a woman, walked past her without a word. The senior monk, however, simply walked up to the woman, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the churning water, and gently set her down on the other side. He bowed slightly and continued his journey. The junior monk was scandalized. He was bursting with indignation, his mind a whirlwind of judgments. For the next 2 hours, as they walked in silence, he fumed. He replayed the scene over and over, composing lectures on the importance of the precepts, on the danger of temptation, on the shame of the senior monk's transgression. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? Our rules clearly forbid us from even touching a woman." "It was a serious breach of your vows." The senior monk looked at him, his expression one of pure compassion, and replied softly, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river 2 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? We are all in our own way." The junior monk, we carry people, events, and feelings with us long after they have passed. We carry the weight of an insult from last week, the memory of a failure from last year, the attachment to a pleasure from a decade ago. We carry the heavy burden of who we think we should be, the ghost of who we once were, and the crushing expectation of who we want to become. These are the women by the river that we refuse to put down. Attachment is this act of carrying. It is the refusal to let life flow. It is crucial here to make a distinction between love and attachment, for they are often mistaken for one another. Love, in its purest form, is expansive, generous, and freeing. Love sees a flower and appreciates its beauty, wishing for it to flourish. Love desires the happiness of another being. For that being's own sake, it is an open hand that allows the bird to fly free. Attachment, on the other hand, is contractive, possessive, and fearful. Attachment sees a flower and feels the need to pluck it, to own it, to keep it from wilting, which ironically is what guarantees its death. Attachment desires another being in order to secure its own happiness. It is a clenched fist that tries to hold the bird, suffocating it in the process. Love says, "I wish you to be happy." Attachment says, "I need you to make me happy." You can see the profound difference. One is a gift, the other is a demand. The suffering of attachment arises from a fundamental conflict with reality. The core nature of our existence is impermanence, or anicca. Everything changes. Our bodies change with every breath. Our feelings are in constant flux. The people we love will change, and one day will be gone. The world itself is a ceaseless dance of arising and passing away. Attachment is the act of building a solid, permanent house on the banks of a constantly moving river. It is a futile struggle against the nature of reality itself. We cling to a moment of joy, trying to freeze it in time, and so we cannot fully enjoy the next moment. We cling to a version of a person in our mind, and we suffer when they grow and change. We cling to our youth, our health, our possessions, as if they were permanent fixtures, and we live in constant fear of their inevitable loss. This struggle, this friction between our desire for permanence and the reality of impermanence, is the deep, underlying cause of so much of our anxiety and sorrow. So, how do we begin to loosen this grip? How do we learn the art of letting go? The practice is not one of dramatic renunciation, but of gentle, persistent observation. It begins with the contemplation of impermanence in our daily lives. Look around you. See the steam rising from a cup of tea, existing for a moment, then vanishing. See the light of the afternoon sun shifting across the floor. Listen to a sound from its beginning to its end. The practice is to see the transient nature of all phenomena, not with sadness, but with a peaceful wisdom. When you experience a moment of great pleasure, enjoy it fully, but add a quiet whisper in your mind. This too is impermanent. I will enjoy it without clinging. When you experience a moment of great pain or sadness, feel it fully, but add the same whisper. This too is impermanent. I can endure it without being destroyed by it. This practice of letting go is not an embrace of cold indifference. This is a common fear. We think that if we let go of our attachments, we will no longer love, we will no longer care. But the opposite is true. Letting go allows us to love more purely and more completely. When you are not afraid of losing someone, you are free to love them for who they are. Right now, in this moment, you are not loving the idea of them or the security they provide you, but the living, breathing, changing reality of them. You can engage with the world with an open heart because your happiness is no longer dependent on the world behaving in a certain way. You can savor the sweetness of the fruit without fearing the eventual emptiness of the branch. This is true freedom. Think of your mind as a hand. Attachment is a clenched fist, desperately trying to hold on to a handful of water. It is tense, fearful, and ultimately futile as the water inevitably slips through the fingers. Letting go is an open hand. It can gently receive the water, feel its coolness, experience it fully. and then allow it to flow on without resistance. The open hand is relaxed, free, and ready to receive whatever comes next. The practice of releasing attachment is the practice of unclenching the fist of the mind. Finger by finger, we let go of our rigid opinions, our need to be right, our attachment to our self-image, our grip on the past and the future. With each release, we feel a new lightness, a new sense of space and freedom. We put down the invisible burdens, one by one, until we can walk our path with ease and grace. This clinging, this desperate holding on, is often fueled by a deeper, more primal force. It is the fear of the void, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of what will happen when we finally let go of the familiar. It is a shadow that follows us, whispering doubts and anxieties into our ear. To truly be free, this is the shadow we must turn to face next. As we stand on the shore of the great river of life, having learned to let go of the burdens we carry, we may feel a moment of lightness, a sense of release, but then a new feeling often arises. As our hands become empty, a chill can creep in. It is the fear of the unknown, the fear of what lies ahead in the unmapped territory of a life lived without clinging. This is the shadow that follows us, a constant companion that whispers anxieties into the quiet corners of our mind. Fear is perhaps the most ancient and primal of our inner states. It is a cold knot in the stomach, a frantic beating of the heart, a paralysis that can freeze us in our tracks. It is the architect of our tallest walls and the jailer of our most profound aspirations. We spend so much of our energy running from this shadow, distracting ourselves from it, or fighting it in a battle we can never win. The path of wisdom, however, does not teach us to run faster or fight harder. It teaches us to stop, to turn around, and to face the shadow with the steady light of awareness. There is a tale of a legendary warrior who was tasked with a great challenge. He had to enter a dark cave, a place rumored to be filled with horrifying demons and monsters. No one who had entered had ever returned. Other warriors had approached the cave with their swords drawn, their bodies tensed for battle, their minds filled with images of combat. They were consumed by the darkness before they even took a step inside. This warrior, however, was different. He had trained not only his body, but also his mind. He walked to the mouth of the cave, and he felt the cold grip of fear, just as all the others had. His heart pounded, his palms sweat, but instead of drawing his sword, he did something entirely different. He reached into his pack, took out a single candle and a flint, and with a steady hand, he struck a spark and lit the wick, holding the small, gentle flame before him. He took a step into the darkness. As the light pierced the gloom, a monstrous shape with terrifying horns was revealed to be nothing more than a gnarled tree root. Another slithering beast turned out to be a long, twisted vine hanging from the ceiling. A host of lurking demons became a simple pile of misshapen rocks. With each step he took, the light of his candle transformed the horrors of his imagination into the simple, harmless reality of the cave. He walked all the way through and emerged on the other side. Unyarmid. This story is a perfect metaphor for our inner world. The cave is our own mind when it is unexamined. The monsters are our fears, and the candle is the light of mindfulness, of clear, non-judgmental awareness. Fear thrives in the darkness of speculation and assumption. It is a creature made of stories. The profound truth is that we are almost never afraid of what is happening in the present moment. We are afraid of a story. Our mind is telling us about a future moment. The mind is a master storyteller, a tireless author of horror fiction. It creates vivid narratives titled, "What if I fail? What if they leave me? What if I get sick? What if I am not good enough?" We then react to these mental movies as if they were real. The racing heart, the tight chest, the panicked thoughts, these are our physical and emotional responses to a phantom, a projection. We are not afraid of the interview tomorrow. We are afraid of our story about failing the interview. We are not afraid of the conversation we need to have. We are afraid of our story about rejection. When we look deeper, we find that most of our specific, everyday fears are branches growing from just a few fundamental roots. The first great root is the fear of death, the fear of annihilation, the terror of our own non-existence. The second is the fear of not being loved, the fear of isolation, of being cast out from the tribe and left to face the world alone. And the third is the fear of failure or inadequacy, the fear that we will be seen as worthless, that the I we work so hard to build and protect will be diminished or shattered. All of these fears are deeply connected to the survival of our ego, our sense of a separate, solid self. The ego's primary job is to protect itself, and it uses fear as its most effective tool to keep us from taking risks, from being vulnerable, and from exploring the unknown where it might lose its sense of control. The practice of working with fear, then, is the practice of lighting the candle. It is the practice of turning towards the fear, instead of away from it. When you feel the familiar chill begin to spread, the first step is to pause. Simply stop what you are doing. Take a conscious breath. The next step is not to try and figure out why you are afraid, but to discover where you are afraid. Bring your attention into the landscape of your body. Where does this fear live? Is it a tightness in your throat, a hollowness in your solar plexus, a trembling in your legs? Let your awareness gently explore this physical sensation. Don't label it bad or wrong. Just feel it as pure energy. Is it vibrating? Is it hot or cold? Is it sharp or dull? Breathe into that space. By meeting fear on this physical level, you disarm it. You separate the raw bodily sensation from the terrifying story the mind is trying to weave around it. The sensation itself is just energy. It is manageable. It is the story that makes it unbearable. As you stay with the sensation, you can then gently name what you are feeling. You can say to yourself, "This is fear. I am experiencing the feeling of fear." This simple act of labeling, of naming, creates a crucial space. You are no longer lost in the fear, completely identified with it. You become the observer, the one who is aware of the fear. You are the warrior holding the candle, not the monster cowering in the dark. In this space of awareness, the fear begins to lose its power. You can see it for what it is, a collection of sensations and thoughts passing through you, like a storm cloud. It is not the sky, it is just weather, and the weather always changes. This leads to a radical redefinition of courage. We are taught that courage is the absence of fear, but this is a myth. The bravest people in the world feel fear. True courage, true spiritual strength, is not about being fearless. It is about acting with wisdom and kindness, despite the presence of fear. It is the willingness to feel the fear fully and to take the next wise step anyway. It is the courage to stay present with the discomfort in your body. It is the courage to be vulnerable and speak your truth, even when your voice is shaking. It is the courage to keep your heart open, even when it feels threatened. Each time you meet your fear with awareness instead of resistance, you are cultivating this true courage. You are showing yourself that you are bigger than your fear. Fear, when met with this gentle attention, can be transformed from a jailer into a teacher. It becomes a wise guide, a compass that points directly to the areas in your life that are calling for growth. It shows you where you are clinging, where you are contracted, and where you are living in a story instead of in reality. By learning to face this shadow, to illuminate it with the candle of awareness, we reclaim the vast territory of our lives that fear had stolen from us. We have now looked at the fire of anger, the chains of attachment, and the shadow of fear, but we find that all of these powerful forces are fed by a single, pervasive source. They grow in the same fertile ground, a kind of fog that clouds our perception and prevents us from seeing things as they truly are. This fog is known as ignorance, and it is the very root we must now examine. We have journeyed into the heart of our most turbulent emotions. We have faced the consuming fire of anger, the heavy chains of attachment, and the paralyzing shadow of fear. In exploring these states, we may have noticed that they are all interconnected, that they seem to draw their power from the same hidden source. They are like different species of thorny plants, each with its own unique sting, but all growing from the same dark, fertile soil. This common ground, this fundamental root of all our suffering, is what the Buddha called avidya in English. It is often translated as ignorance, but this translation can be misleading. In this context, ignorance is not a lack of intelligence or a deficit of knowledge. You can be a brilliant scientist, a celebrated artist, or a master of philosophy, and still be living in a state of profound ignorance. Here, ignorance means something far deeper. It is a fundamental misperception of reality, a kind of spiritual blindness that prevents us from seeing ourselves and the world as they truly are. It is a pervasive fog that settles over our minds, causing us to mistake illusions for truth and shadows for substance. There is a timeless parable that perfectly captures the nature of this ignorance. A king brought an elephant into his courtyard and then summoned a group of men who had been blind from birth. He asked them to approach the elephant, to touch it, and to describe what it was. The first man reached out, and his hands found the elephant's broad, sturdy leg. I see, he proclaimed with great confidence. An elephant is a magnificent living pillar. The second man grasped the elephant's tail as it swished back and forth. No, you are mistaken. He argued, "An elephant is clearly a kind of rope." The third man felt the creature's long, curving tusk. "You are both wrong," he declared. "It is obvious that an elephant is a hard, smooth spear." A fourth man happened to touch the elephant's ear, which was large and waving. "Fools," he shouted. "Anyone can see that an elephant is a type of giant fan." And so it went, each man touching a different part, and each becoming absolutely convinced that his partial experience represented the whole truth. An argument broke out, with each blind man clinging fiercely to his own perception. Unable to comprehend the experience of the others, the king watched with a sad smile, for he could see the whole elephant. He understood that each man was partially right in his description, but completely wrong in his conclusion. We are all like these blind men. We navigate the world by touching our own small piece of reality, and then we construct an entire worldview based on that limited, fragmented experience. We grasp onto our body and say, "This is me." We cling to a fleeting feeling of happiness and say, "This is what life should be." We are hurt by a painful emotion and say, "The world is a place of suffering." We are each holding just one part of the elephant, and we mistake it for the whole. This is ignorance. It is this fundamental misseeing that gives rise to the three great illusions that bind us to suffering. The first illusion is the belief in permanence. We live as though things are stable, solid, and lasting. We build our homes, our careers, and our relationships on an unspoken assumption that they will endure. We look in the mirror and see a familiar face, forgetting that billions of cells have changed since yesterday. We fall in love and expect that feeling to remain at its peak forever, because our perception is clouded by this fog of permanence. We are constantly shocked and traumatized by the fundamental nature of reality, which is change, loss, sickness, old age, and death are not aberrations. They are the law. The river of life is always flowing. Ignorance is the act of trying to build a dam in that river with our bare hands, and then wondering why we are always exhausted and overwhelmed. The second, and perhaps most profound illusion, is the belief in a solid, separate self. Deep within each of us is a powerful feeling of an I. We feel there is a permanent entity, a CEO in the headquarters of our mind, who is the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, and the experiencer of our life. This I is what we work so hard to protect, to promote, and to please. This is the self that feels pride, shame, jealousy, and fear, the wisdom of the path. However, reveals this solid self to be an illusion. When we look deeply, we cannot find it. We find only a constantly shifting process, a body, sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, all arising and passing away from moment to moment. There is no permanent pilot in the machine. The self is more like a wave in the ocean than a rock on the shore. The wave has a temporary form and identity, but it is made of nothing other than water. It arises from the ocean and returns to the ocean. The belief in a separate self, or atā, is the source of our selfishness, our conflicts, and our ultimate terror of death, which the ego perceives as its own annihilation. The third great illusion is the belief that we can find lasting happiness through the satisfaction of our cravings. Our society is built on this illusion. It tells us, if only you get that new car, that bigger house, that promotion, that perfect partner, then you will be happy. So we spend our lives chasing these things, like a thirsty person drinking salt water. For a brief moment, the craving is quenched, but the salt water of desire only makes the underlying thirst more intense. We get the car, and then we want a better one. We get the promotion, and then we worry about the next one. This endless cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again is the very definition of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. We are like hamsters on a wheel, running faster and faster, but never arriving at a place of true, lasting peace. How, then, do we begin to dispel this all-pervasive fog? The antidote to ignorance, avidya, is wisdom, prajna. And like ignorance, wisdom is not about accumulating intellectual knowledge. You cannot read your way to enlightenment. Prajna is a direct and penetrating insight into the true nature of reality. It is the king who can see the whole elephant. It is the moment you don't just understand the concept of impermanence, but you feel it in the passing of your own breath. It is the difference between reading a menu and actually tasting the food. This wisdom is cultivated through a path that has two essential wings, like those of a bird. One wing is learning the teachings, studying the Dharma. This is like being given a map of the territory and a description of the destination. The map is invaluable. It shows us where to go and what pitfalls to avoid. But a map is not the territory itself. The other wing, which is absolutely essential, is the direct experience of practice. This is meditation, contemplation, and mindfulness in daily life. This is the act of lighting our own candle and walking into the cave of our own experience to see for ourselves. Through practice, we are not taking anyone else's word for it. We are directly observing the impermanence of our thoughts, the no-self nature of our feelings, and the unsatisfying nature of our cravings. We are seeing things, finally, as they truly are. The journey out of ignorance is the ultimate journey of liberation. Anger, attachment, and fear are merely symptoms of being lost in the fog. The practice of wisdom is the act of patiently, persistently, and compassionately clearing that fog, moment by moment, to begin this journey of dispelling the fog, to find our way out of the cave. We don't need a complex or esoteric tool. We need something profoundly simple, something that has been with us since the moment we were born, a faithful companion waiting patiently for our attention. We need to return to the anchor of the breath. We have spoken of the great fog of ignorance, the fundamental misperception that keeps us lost in a cycle of suffering. To find our way out of this fog, to begin the journey back to clarity, we do not need to embark on a grand or complicated quest. We do not need an external savior or an esoteric doctrine. The first step, the key to the entire path, is something you are already doing. It is something you have been doing every moment of every day since you were born. and will continue to do until your very last moment. It is the simple, miraculous, and almost constantly overlooked act of breathing. The breath is our most faithful companion, an anchor to life itself, and it is the gateway back to the only time that truly exists, the present moment. In our ordinary state, our body and mind are rarely in the same place. Your body is here, sitting in this chair, but where is your mind? It may be rehearsing a conversation from yesterday, worrying about a deadline next week, or lost in a daydream about a future vacation. The mind is a time traveler, constantly leaping between the graveyard of the past and the fantasy land of the future. The body, however, knows only the present. It cannot be anywhere else. The breath is the magical bridge that connects these two separated worlds. It is both a physical, autonomic process of the body and a process we can consciously regulate with the mind. When we intentionally bring our full attention to the sensation of breathing, we are gently inviting the wandering mind to come home. We are asking the mind to join the body, right here, right now. This simple act of reuniting body and mind in the present moment is the beginning of all healing and all wisdom. The practice of mindfulness, of breathing, or anapanasati, is a radical act in our modern world. We are a culture obsessed with doing, with achieving, with improving, with acquiring. The instruction to simply sit and do nothing but watch the breath can seem pointless or even impossible. Our minds, accustomed to constant stimulation, rebel against the stillness. But this doing nothing is a profound and active process. It is the conscious choice to step off the frantic hamster wheel of thought. It is not about controlling the breath, forcing it to be deep or slow. It is simply about knowing it. The practice is one of intimate, gentle observation. Let us explore how to begin. Find a comfortable posture, either sitting on a cushion or in a chair. You don't need to force yourself into a painful position. The goal is to create a posture of relaxed dignity, with the spine upright but not rigid. Allow your eyes to gently close, or rest your gaze softly on the floor a few feet in front of you. Now, for a few moments, simply bring your awareness to the fact that you are breathing. Don't change anything, just notice the breath as it enters your body and as it leaves your body. You can place your attention at the tip of your nostrils, feeling the subtle sensation of the air as it passes in, cool and dry, and as it passes out, warm and moist. Or you can rest your attention on the abdomen, feeling the gentle rise on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath. Choose one of these anchor points and let your attention rest there, as lightly as a butterfly resting on a flower. When the breath is long, simply know this is a long in-breath. When the breath is short, simply know this is a short out-breath. You are not judging it, not analyzing it. You are simply knowing it. Very quickly, you will discover that your mind has other plans. After a few breaths, you may find that you are no longer watching the breath, but are instead planning your dinner, replaying an argument, or worrying about your finances. This is the moment where many people become discouraged. They think, I can't do this. My mind is too busy. I am a failure at meditation. This is the most important misunderstanding to overcome. The mind's nature is to wander. It is like a curious puppy that has been let off its leash. It will run here and there, sniffing at everything it finds. Your job is not to beat the puppy into submission. Your job is to be the kind, patient owner. When you notice the puppy has wandered away, which you will thousands of times, you simply acknowledge where it has gone, thinking, and then you gently, lovingly call it back, returning your attention to the breath. The practice is not about staying on the breath without fail. The practice is the act of returning over and over again, with infinite patience and kindness towards yourself. Every single time you notice that you have been lost in thought, that moment of noticing is a moment of success. It is a moment of mindfulness. You have woken up, and with that awakening, you have another precious opportunity to come home to the breath. There is a beautiful story of the Buddha instructing his own son, the young monk Rahula, on this very practice. He did not use mystical language. He used a simple, practical analogy. He said, Rahula, just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice knows, when he makes a long pull with his saw, I am making a long pull, and when he makes a short pull, I am making a short pull. So too, a monk, when breathing in long, knows, I am breathing in long, and when breathing out long, knows, I am breathing out long. The wisdom here is in its profound simplicity. The carpenter is not stressed about his pull. He is not judging it or wishing it were different. He is simply aware of the tool in his hand and the work he is doing. Our breath is our tool, and our work is the cultivation of awareness. The goal is to develop this same quality of bare, non-judgmental attention towards our own inner experience. As you continue this practice, you will discover that the breath is more than just an anchor. It becomes a refuge in a world filled with chaos, unpredictability, and noise. The breath is a constant, reliable sanctuary that you carry with you at all times. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by emotion, lost in a storm of anxious thoughts, or disconnected from your own body, you can always return to the simple rhythm of your breathing. It is a portable home, an island of calm in the middle of a turbulent sea. No one can take it away from you. Taking a single conscious breath can be enough to break the spell of anxiety, to create a space between a trigger and your reaction, and to bring you back to the sanity of the present moment. This simple practice of watching the breath is the foundational training for the mind. It is like lifting weights for the muscle of attention. With each gentle return to the breath, you are strengthening your capacity for concentration, your patience, and your compassion for your own wandering mind. You are polishing the inner mirror so that you can begin to see things more clearly. This is the first essential step in dispelling the fog of ignorance. As we become more familiar with this anchor, as our mind learns to rest in the harbor of the breath for longer periods, we begin to notice more about the world around us and within us. We start to see the richness of the present moment with a new clarity. The simple act of breathing becomes the gateway to a much vaster state of being, the state of mindfulness. Having discovered the breath as our anchor, we have found the gateway back to the present moment. The practice of returning to the breath again and again trains our mind to stay. But what do we find when we arrive? What is the landscape that this gateway opens into? This is the realm of mindfulness. If breathing meditation is the training ground, then mindfulness is the art of living that we practice in the world. It is the treasure we unearth when we stop digging in the past for regrets and stop searching the future for anxieties. For most of our lives, we operate in a state best described as autopilot. Have you ever driven your car along a familiar route and arrived at your destination with no real memory of the journey? Have you ever eaten a delicious meal while scrolling through your phone, only to look down and find the plate empty without having truly tasted a single bite? Have you ever been in a conversation, nodding your head, while your mind was composing an email or planning the weekend? This is the trance of modern life. We are physically present, but our consciousness is elsewhere. We are sleepwalking through our own precious moments. We live in a world of concepts, ideas, and distractions, rather than in the direct, vibrant reality of our own experience. Mindfulness is the gentle but radical act of waking up from this trance. At its core, mindfulness, or sati in the ancient Pali language, is a very simple concept. A great modern teacher, Jon Kabat-Zinn, has defined it as paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack that. For each part is a crucial instruction. Paying attention, it is an active choice, a conscious turning of the mind towards what is happening. On purpose, we are intentional about it. We are not just randomly buffeted by whatever is loudest. In the present moment, this is the only place life is actually happening. And non-judgmentally, this is perhaps the most challenging and most healing aspect. It means we observe our experience without the constant commentary of, "I like this. I don't like that. This is good. This is bad. I should be feeling something else." We simply allow things to be as they are. There is a story of a curious student who approached a great Zen master, renowned for his profound sense of peace and vitality. "Master," the student asked, "you seem so serene and content. What is your secret?" The master smiled and replied, "It is very simple. When I eat, I eat. When I walk, I walk. When I sit, I sit. When I sleep, I sleep." The student, confused, said, "But master, everyone does that." The master's smile widened. "No," he said, "when you eat, you are thinking of the work you must do later. When you walk, your mind has already arrived at your destination. When you sit, you are restless, planning 100 other things. You are never truly where you are. When I eat, I am only eating. The entire universe exists in that single grain of rice." This is the heart of mindfulness. It is the art of bringing your whole being to a single moment. And this is not something reserved only for when we are sitting on a meditation cushion. The ultimate goal is to weave this awareness into the very fabric of our daily lives. You can begin with a simple activity, like drinking a cup of tea. Instead of gulping it down while doing 10 other things, try drinking it with mindfulness. Notice the weight and warmth of the cup in your hands. See the color of the tea, the steam rising from its surface. Bring it to your nose and inhale the aroma. When you take a sip, notice the sensation of warmth and flavor spreading through your mouth. Experience the act of swallowing. You may discover that you have had thousands of cups of tea in your life, but you have never truly tasted one before. This practice can be extended to any activity. When you are walking, you can feel the sensations of your feet making contact with the ground, the rhythm of your body, the feeling of the air on your skin. This is walking meditation. When you are listening to someone, you can practice mindful listening. Instead of formulating your reply while they are still speaking, you can offer them the rare and precious gift of your full, undivided attention. You listen not just to their words, but to the feeling behind the words. You listen with your whole body. This practice of mindful awareness also extends to our rich and often turbulent inner world. We can learn to be mindful of our feelings, thoughts, and emotions. The classic metaphor for this is to see your mind as a vast, open sky. Your thoughts and emotions are the clouds that drift through it. The sky does not cling to the beautiful, fluffy white clouds of joy, and it does not fight or try to push away the dark, stormy clouds of sadness or anger. The sky simply allows all clouds to be there, to arise, to float by, and to dissolve in their own time. Mindfulness is the practice of becoming the sky. Our habit is to be the cloud, to identify with it completely. When a thought of sadness appears, we say, "I am sad." Mindfulness allows us to shift our perspective and say, "I am aware of a feeling of sadness." You are the sky, not the cloud. This recognition creates a space of freedom and stops us from being swept away by every passing mental state. Perhaps the most life-changing power of mindfulness is its ability to create a pause. The psychologist Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." For most of us, that space does not exist. A driver cuts us off in traffic stimulus, and instantly there is anger and a blast of the horn response. Someone criticizes us, stimulus, and instantly there is defensiveness response. We are like puppets, and our conditioning is pulling the strings. Mindfulness is what creates that sacred pause. The driver cuts you off. Because you have been practicing, you notice the immediate flash of heat in your chest, the tightening in your stomach, the angry thought forming in your mind. You see it all happening. And because you see it, you are not it. You have a moment of choice. You can still choose to honk the horn, but you can also choose to take a breath, to recognize that the other driver may be rushing to a hospital or is simply lost in their own suffering, and you can choose to let it go. You have taken back your power. You are no longer a puppet. You are free. This is the treasure of the present moment. It is not an empty, sterile place. It is vibrant, rich, and full of life. If only we would stop and pay attention. Mindfulness is the key that unlocks this richness. It is the simple, profound practice of showing up for our own life. When we practice mindfulness consistently, when we truly begin to inhabit the present moment, we start to notice a fundamental truth about everything we observe, both inside and out. We notice that nothing stays the same. The breath, the thoughts, the sounds, the world itself, it is all in constant motion. This direct, experiential seeing of change leads us to one of the most profound insights of the path, the truth of impermanence. As we settle into the practice of mindfulness, as we learn to rest our awareness in the gentle harbor of the present moment, we begin to notice something remarkable. We see that the present moment is not a static place. It is not a frozen photograph. It is a dynamic, vibrant, and ceaselessly flowing river. The sensations in our body shift and change. Our thoughts arise and dissolve. The sounds around us appear and vanish. Nothing holds still. This direct, experiential seeing of change is the doorway to one of the most fundamental and liberating truths of the path, the law of impermanence, or anicca, in our hearts. We are all permanent seekers. We build our lives on the unspoken assumption that things will last. We want our happiness to be permanent, our youth and health to be permanent, our loved ones to stay with us forever, our moments of triumph to be frozen in time. This deep-seated desire for permanence puts us in direct conflict with the fundamental nature of the universe. The universe is a grand, cosmic dance of change. Galaxies are born and die. Mountains rise and erode. Seasons turn. And our own bodies are in a constant state of flux, with cells dying and being born in every instant. To resist change is like standing on the bank of a mighty river and commanding it to stop flowing. It is an exhausting, futile, and heartbreaking struggle. All our suffering related to loss, grief, and disappointment comes from this single, foundational resistance. We are fighting a battle against reality itself. The story of Kisa Gotami is perhaps the most poignant teaching on the nature of impermanence and the path to its acceptance. Gotami was a young woman who lived in the time of the Buddha. Her life was one of pure joy, for she had a beautiful baby son whom she loved more than life itself. But one day, tragedy struck. The child fell ill and died. Gotami was consumed by a grief so absolute that it drove her mad. She refused to believe her son was gone. Clutching his small, lifeless body, she wandered from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man saw her profound suffering and guided her to the Buddha, saying, "He is the great physician. If anyone has a medicine for you, it is him." Gotami ran to the Buddha and laid her son at his feet. "Master," she pleaded, "can you give me the medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her not with pity, but with boundless compassion, and said, "Yes, I can help you, but to make the medicine, I need a special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed from a house in the village where no one a child, a husband, a parent, or a servant has ever died. Hope surged in Gautami's heart. A mustard seed was such a simple thing. Surely she could find one. She set off on her quest immediately, going from door to door. At the first house, she asked, "Can you spare me a mustard seed for a medicine from the Buddha?" "Of course." The woman of the house said, bringing some out. As Gautami reached for it, she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said sadly, "do not remind me of my deepest sorrow. My husband died just last year." Gautami left the seeds and went to the next house. And the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family was happy to give her a mustard seed, but every family had been touched by death. One had lost a parent, another a sister, another a child. She heard a common refrain, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As the day wore on and she journeyed through the village, a profound transformation began to take place within her. Her frantique, personal grief began to soften and expand. She started to see that her devastating loss was not a unique punishment, inflicted only upon her. It was a universal law, a shared experience that connected her to every single person she met. As evening fell, she sat on the outskirts of the village, watching the flickering oil lamps being lit in the houses. Some flared brightly, others more dimly. One by one, they would flicker and go out. In that moment, she had a deep insight. The lives of people were just like these lamps. They flare up for a time, and then they are extinguished. The arising and passing away was the nature of all things. Her own son's life had been just like one of those brief, beautiful flames. With this understanding, her heart broke open, not with frantic grief, but with a deep, compassionate acceptance of the way things are. She reverently laid her son's body to rest and returned to the Buddha. He looked at her and asked, "Did you bring the mustard seed?" "No." "Master," she replied, "the work is done. I have seen that I am not alone in my sorrow. Death is everywhere." The Buddha then knew she was ready to hear the truth, not as a philosophy, but as a lived reality. He taught her the path, and she became one of his most dedicated disciples. Kisa Gautami's journey shows us that accepting impermanence is not a cold, intellectual exercise. It is a profound shift of the heart. And surprisingly, when we stop fighting change, we discover its hidden beauty. Impermanence is not a cosmic flaw. It is what makes life possible. A seed can only grow into a mighty tree because it is impermanent. Because it is willing to change, a caterpillar can only become a butterfly because it embraces transformation. Our own suffering is not permanent. A painful emotion, a difficult period in life, these things will also change. This is the very basis of hope. Furthermore, the transient nature of life is what makes each moment so incredibly precious. If you knew you could listen to a piece of music only once, you would listen with your entire being. Life is that piece of music. This very moment, this very breath, will never come again. Impermanence is an invitation to wake up and participate fully in our lives, to cherish our loved ones, to savor our joys, and to meet our sorrows with courage. knowing that they, too, will pass. The practice, then, is to become a student of change. We can watch it in the world around us, the passing clouds, the cycle of the seasons, the waxing and waning of the moon, and most importantly, we can watch it within ourselves. In our meditation, we can notice the impermanent nature of the breath, of sounds, of bodily sensations. We can watch a thought arise from nowhere, exist for a moment, and vanish. We can feel an emotion swell up and then recede. We greet this constant flow not with fear or clinging, but with a curious and accepting heart. We learn to dance with the river instead of trying to stop it. As we become more comfortable with the truth that everything around us and within us is in constant flow, a profound question naturally arises. If everything is changing our body, our feelings, our thoughts, then, who is the I that is observing all this change? Is there a permanent, solid self at the center of it all? Or is that, too, part of the river? This question leads us to the very heart of the Buddha's teaching, the illusion of the self. We have been journeying together, exploring the ever-flowing river of impermanence. We have seen how everything around us and within us is in a constant state of flux. This leads us to what is perhaps the most profound, challenging, and ultimately liberating inquiry of the spiritual path. As we stand on the bank of this river, watching our thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise and pass away, we must ask the fundamental question: who, or what, is the one who is watching? Is there a permanent, unchanging I at the center of this whirlwind of change? Is there a solid, continuous self who owns these experiences? Or is the watcher also part of the river? This investigation into the nature of the self is the key that unlocks the deepest prison of all, the prison of the ego. Be patient with this exploration, for it goes against our most deeply held assumption, the assumption that I exist as a separate, solid entity. The classic teaching on this subject is found in a remarkable dialogue between a wise Buddhist monk named Nagasena and a Greco-Bactrian king named Milinda. King Milinda was a brilliant and inquisitive ruler, known for his love of debate. He sought out Nagasena to challenge him on the core tenets of his philosophy. The king arrived in his magnificent royal chariot and, after the customary greetings, posed his first question. "Reverend Sir, what is your name?" Nagasena replied. "Your Majesty, I am known as Nagasena. My fellow monks address me as such. However, it is only a designation, a name, à convenient label, for in the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person or soul to be found here." King Milinda, a master of logic, smiled, a fascinating claim. He said, "If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food, who lives a life of virtue or vice, who receives merit or demerit?" He then pointed to his own grand chariot. "Reverend Nagasena," he asked, "did you arrive on foot or in a vehicle?" "I came in a cart." "Your Majesty, then show me the cart." The king commanded, "Is the pole the cart?" "No." "Your Majesty," Nagasena replied, "are the wheels the cart, the axle, the frame, the ropes, the yoke to each question?" Nagasena calmly answered, "No, Your Majesty. The king pressed his advantage. Then are all of these parts together? The cart, no. Your Majesty. Then is the cart something separate from all of its parts? No. Your Majesty. The king laughed triumphantly. Then, Reverend Sir, you speak a falsehood. There is no cart. It was at this moment that Nagasena gently turned the king's own logic back on him. Your Majesty. He asked, how did you arrive here today? You said you came in a chariot. But as you have so skillfully demonstrated, the chariot is not the wheels, nor the axle, nor any of its parts, nor the collection of them, nor something outside of them. So where is this chariot? Is it anything more than a sound? A name we give to a particular arrangement of parts that function together in a certain way. King Melinda was silent for a long moment. Stunned by the monk's wisdom, he realized the truth. The word chariot is simply a conventional name, a concept used to describe a functioning assembly. It has no independent, inherent existence of its own. Nagasena then delivered the final insight. Just as the word chariot is a convenient label for the collection of its parts, so too is the name Nagasena a convenient label for the collection of physical and mental components that make up this being. In ultimate reality, there is no separate self to be found. This is the profound teaching of no self, or anatta. It is not a declaration that we do not exist. It is an invitation to investigate how we exist. We feel like a solid I, but let's look for it. Just as the king looked for the chariot, the Buddha analyzed a being into 5 components, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. First, there is the body. Is your body you? It is made entirely of non-body elements. The food you ate, the water you drank, the air you breathe. It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick. You can lose a limb and you are still you. So the body cannot be the permanent, unchanging self. Second, there are your feelings or sensations, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Are they you? Feelings are fleeting visitors, arising when there is contact between a sense organ and an object, and then disappearing just as quickly. You are not your pleasure or your pain. Third, there are your perceptions. This is the faculty that recognizes and labels things blue, tree, sound. Are your perceptions you? They are conditioned by your past experiences and can often be mistaken. They are not a stable self. Fourth, there are your mental formations. This is a vast category that includes your thoughts, your habits, your opinions, your moods, your intentions, your prejudices. This is what we often think of as our personality. But are these formations truly you? They are in constant flux, changing with new information and experiences. A thought appears from nowhere and vanishes just as mysteriously. You are not your thoughts. Fifth, there is consciousness. This is the basic awareness of the other components' consciousness, of seeing, of hearing, of thinking. Is this consciousness you? Consciousness is always dependent on an object. There cannot be seeing without something seen. It is not a standalone entity, not a permanent soul watching the show. It arises and passes away with each moment of experience. If the self is not in any one of these parts, nor is it simply the sum of them, nor is it something existing outside of them, then what is it, like the chariot? The self is a convenient label for a dynamic, interdependent process. It is a verb, not a noun. It is a constantly changing pattern of energy, a river of psychophysical events. This idea can feel frightening at first. It can feel like a loss, a negation. But this is the key to true freedom. When you see through the illusion of the separate self, the entire landscape of your life changes. Think of all the suffering that comes from protecting and defending this I. Anger arises when I am insulted. Greed arises when I want something. Jealousy arises when someone has something that I don't. Fear arises because I am afraid of being harmed or annihilated. Almost all of our emotional turmoil is a form of ego defense. But if you see that the thing you are defending is an illusion, a ghost, the need for defense dissolves. The anger, the greed, the fear, they lose their target. They have nothing to stick to. This does not lead to a state of cold nothingness. On the contrary, it leads to the birth of boundless compassion. As long as we believe in a solid me, there will always be a solid you. An other. The world is divided into self and non-self, me and them. But when the illusion of the separate self dissolves, these barriers begin to melt away. We see that we are all interconnected, all part of the same process. Your suffering is my suffering. Your joy is my joy. We are not isolated islands, but waves in a single, vast ocean of existence. This is the profound truth of interbeing. A flower is not just a flower. It is made of non-flower elements like sunshine, rain, soil, and air. Without these things, it cannot exist. In the same way, we are made of non-us elements, our parents, our food, our culture, the entire universe. We inter-are with everything. Seeing this truth is not an intellectual exercise. It is a deep, experiential shift. It is the letting go of the heaviest burden we carry, the burden of being a separate, isolated self. It is not a loss of self, but a discovery of a self so vast, so interconnected, that it contains the entire cosmos. This profound shift in perspective, from seeing ourselves as isolated islands to understanding we are waves in a single ocean, naturally gives rise to a different way of relating to the world. When the I is no longer the center of the universe, the heart naturally opens. This opening is the birth of boundless compassion. The next essential quality we must cultivate on our path, having journeyed to the profound and subtle insight of no self, having seen that the walls of our separate ego are more illusory than real, we arrive at a natural and beautiful consequence. When the fortress of I begins to dissolve, the heart, which was once kept guarded within its walls, is free to open. This opening is not a sentimental mood or a fleeting emotion. It is the dawning of a new way of being in the world, a way rooted in boundless compassion and unconditional loving kindness. These qualities, known as karuna and metta, are not moral commandments to be followed. but are the radiant warmth that naturally emanates from a mind that sees things clearly. They are the fragrance of wisdom, the logical expression of interconnectedness. When we truly understand that your suffering is not separate from my suffering, the only sane response is one of love. Our training in this world often teaches us the opposite. We are taught to be guarded, to be competitive, to protect our own interests. The cultivation of an open heart is a gentle rebellion against this conditioning. It is the most powerful medicine for healing ourselves and our fractured world. But where does this radical practice begin? We cannot start by trying to love the entire world if our own heart is a barren land. We must begin where we are. The practice of loving kindness starts with ourselves. For many of us, this is the most difficult step of all. Our minds are home to a harsh inner critic, a relentless judge who keeps a detailed record of all our flaws and failures. We may feel we are unworthy of love, that extending kindness to ourselves is a form of selfish indulgence. But consider this: you cannot pour water from an empty vessel. You cannot offer warmth to others if your own hearth is cold and dark. Trying to love others without first offering that same love to yourself leads only to resentment, burnout, and a sense of depletion. Therefore, the first and most courageous act of compassion is to turn that kindness inward. The practice can be very simple. Find a quiet moment. You can place a hand gently over your heart, a simple gesture of warmth and self-acceptance. Then begin to offer yourself phrases of loving kindness. Like a gentle rain on dry earth, you can use the traditional phrases or words that resonate with you. Silently repeat to yourself, "May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease." As you say these words, do not worry if you don't feel a sudden rush of emotion. The goal is not to force a feeling, but to plant a seed. You are simply offering the intention. For years, you may have planted seeds of self-criticism. Now, you are planting new seeds. With patience and repetition, they will grow. You are learning to become your own best friend. Once you have established a foundation of kindness for yourself, you can begin to expand the circle. This is the practice of metta bhavana, or the cultivation of loving kindness. After offering the phrases to yourself, bring to mind a benefactor, someone who has been kind to you, a dear friend or a beloved teacher. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye, and now extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth and gratitude that arises, and let that feeling radiate from your heart. Next, you bring to mind a neutral person. This might be a cashier at the grocery store, a person you see on your daily commute, someone you neither like nor dislike. You hold their image in your mind and offer them the very same wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This step is powerful because it stretches the muscle of the heart beyond its habitual patterns of preference. It helps us to see the humanity in everyone, not just those in our inner circle. Then comes the most challenging and often most transformative stage. You bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have a conflict, someone who has hurt you. Here, It is important to be wise. If the trauma is too fresh, you can choose someone less challenging. The intention is not to condone their harmful actions or to force yourself into a false sense of reconciliation. The intention is to free yourself. Holding on to hatred and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. In this practice, you recognize that this person's harmful actions almost certainly come from their own deep suffering, their own ignorance. From that space of wisdom, you can tentatively offer the wish, may you also be free from suffering. May you also find peace. In doing so, you are not absolving them. You are liberating yourself from the chains of your own bitterness. Finally, you open the heart completely. You let the circle of loving kindness expand in all directions: front, back, left, right, above, and below. You include all beings without exception: your loved ones, your friends, the neutral people, the difficult people, all people in your city, your country, and throughout the world. You extend it to the animals, the creatures in the sky, on the land, and in the water. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, you are connecting with the boundless, benevolent potential of your own heart. This practice of metta is complemented by the practice of karuna, or compassion. If loving kindness is the wish for all beings to be happy, compassion is the heart's response to the reality that they are not. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is not pity, which creates a distance and implies superiority. Compassion closes the distance. It recognizes the shared nature of our vulnerability. The Buddha taught the meaning of compassion not through lecture, but through his own profound example. One day, while walking through the monastery, he came upon a monk who was terribly ill with dysentery. The other monks, out of disgust or fear of contagion, had completely neglected him. He lay alone in his own filth, groaning in pain. When the Buddha saw this, he did not recoil. He went directly to the monk and, with the help of his attendant Ananda, began to gently wash the sick man's body. He cleaned his sores, changed his soiled robes, and settled him comfortably, speaking to him with words of comfort and solace. Afterwards, the Buddha gathered the other monks together. He asked them, "Why have you neglected this brother?" When they made their excuses, he spoke these powerful words: "Monks, you have no mother or father here to look after you. If you do not care for one another, then who else will know this? Whoever nurses and cares for the sick, that person is nursing and caring for me." This is compassion in action. It is love made manifest. It is the ability to stay present with suffering, our own or another's, and to respond with a desire to help. It is the antidote to fear, indifference, and isolation. When we practice loving kindness and compassion, we are actively rewiring our brains and hearts. We are weakening the ancient neural pathways of anger, jealousy, and fear, and strengthening the pathways of connection, kindness, and joy. Cultivating an open heart is not a passive or sentimental activity. It is a brave and essential practice for anyone on a spiritual path. It is the embodiment of wisdom, the natural result of seeing our deep interconnectedness. It is the force that heals our own inner wounds and ripples out to touch and heal the world around us. One of the most powerful expressions of this compassionate heart is the ability to perform an act that can feel almost impossible, the act of forgiveness. To truly open the heart, we must learn to release the grievances we hold against others. And perhaps most importantly, the judgments we hold against ourselves. This profound act of letting go is where our journey takes us next. As the heart opens through the practice of loving kindness and compassion, we begin to feel a new sense of connection and warmth. But often, there are old wounds that keep the heart from opening completely. There are stubborn knots of resentment, deep grooves of grievance, worn into our minds by past hurts. To allow the heart to become truly boundless, we must undertake one of the most courageous and healing acts on the spiritual path, the practice of forgiveness. This practice is widely misunderstood. We often see it as a sign of weakness, as letting someone off the hook for their wrongdoing, or as a duty we perform for the benefit of the person who hurt us. But true forgiveness, in the light of wisdom, is none of these things. It is a gift you give to yourself. There is a powerful Buddhist teaching that says holding on to anger and resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. Who gets burned? You do. The person who harmed you may be living their life, completely oblivious to your inner turmoil, while you are the one reliving the pain, stewing in the toxic juices of bitterness and the desire for revenge. Forgiveness is the wise and compassionate act of putting down that hot coal. It is the decision to no longer allow the past to poison the present. It is the reclaiming of your own inner peace. It is not about condoning what happened. It is not about forgetting. It is about releasing yourself from the heavy chains of the past so that you can finally be free. The story of Angulimala, one of the most dramatic in all of the Buddhist scriptures, is a profound teaching on the power of transformation and the complex nature of forgiveness. In the time of the Buddha, a fearsome murderer roamed the kingdom of Kosala. His name was Angulimala, which means garland of fingers, for he wore a gruesome necklace made from the fingers of his victims. So great was the terror he inspired that villagers abandoned their homes and roads fell into disuse. One day, despite the pleas of his followers, the Buddha calmly and deliberately set out on the road that led into Angulimala's forest. Angulimala saw the lone monk approaching and was astonished by his courage. "This will be my final victim," he thought, and began to run after him. A strange thing happened. Though Angulimala was a swift and powerful man, and the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, he could not catch up. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted, "Stop!" Monk stopped the Buddha. Without turning, replied in a calm, clear voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." These words struck Angulimala like a bolt of lightning. "What do you mean?" he cried. The Buddha turned to face him and said, "I have stopped forever from doing violence to living beings. I have laid down the rod and the sword. It is you who have not stopped. You are still running on the endless wheel of hatred, violence, and suffering." In that moment, The full weight of his horrific actions crashed down upon Angulimala. His lifetime of rage and delusion shattered. He threw down his sword, fell to his knees before the Buddha, and begged to be accepted as a monk. The Buddha accepted him, and Angulimala dedicated himself to the path with ferocious intensity. Through deep meditation and repentance, he completely transformed his mind, eventually becoming an arhat, a fully enlightened being, his heart filled with a vast and unshakable peace. But this is not where the story of forgiveness ends. Forgiveness does not erase the consequences of our actions. One day, as the now gentle monk Angulimala was walking for alms in a village, the people recognized him. Remembering the terror he had caused, they attacked him. Throwing stones and sticks, he returned to the monastery, bleeding and bruised. His robe torn, the Buddha saw him and said to him, "Bear it, Brahmin, bear it. You are experiencing, in this very life, the result of deeds for which you might have been tormented in hell for many thousands of years." Angulimala, his heart free from all hatred, bore the attacks with perfect equanimity. He had forgiven himself by utterly transforming himself, and so he could meet the world's unforgiveness with a heart of peace. He understood that while his own mind was free, the ripples of his past actions still had to play out in the world. This powerful story teaches us that forgiveness is primarily an internal process. Angulimala's transformation was for his own liberation. The practice of forgiveness for us, too, begins in the landscape of our own heart. Let us explore how to practice it. First, the forgiveness of others. Bring to mind a person who has hurt you. Allow yourself to acknowledge the pain fully. Do not pretend it didn't matter. Your pain is valid. Then, holding that person in your mind, reflect that their harmful actions were born from their own suffering, their own ignorance, their own hot coals. Happy, peaceful people do not go around hurting others. From this space, you can silently offer these words, or words like them, for the pain you have caused me out of your own suffering. I am working to forgive you. I see the burden of anger you carry. I will no longer carry it for you. I release you from the prison of my mind, and I set myself free. You may need to do this many times. It is a process of softening, of letting go. Even more challenging, perhaps, is the forgiveness of ourselves. We are often our own harshest critics, holding ourselves to standards of perfection we would never demand of others. We chain ourselves to past mistakes, replaying them over and over. To forgive yourself, you must first acknowledge the harm you caused. Without excuse, take responsibility. Then, reflect with compassion that at the time you acted, you did so with the level of wisdom and understanding you possessed in that moment. You didn't know then what you know now. See the younger version of yourself, not as a villain, but as someone who was lost, who was suffering, and then you can offer yourself the gift of forgiveness. For the mistakes I have made, for the harm I have caused through my own fear, pain, and ignorance. I forgive myself. I accept my imperfections. I will learn from this, and I will do my best to move forward with greater wisdom and kindness. I offer myself my own compassion. Remember that forgiveness is not an event. It is a process. It is not like flipping a switch. It is more like tending a garden. Some days you will feel spacious and forgiving. On other days, you may find the weeds of anger and resentment have grown back. This is normal. The practice is to simply notice this, and with gentle persistence, to once again turn your heart toward forgiveness, to once again put down the hot coal. Each time you do, the grip of the past weakens, and the heart becomes a little lighter, a little more spacious, a little more free. This profound act of letting go, of releasing the heavy burdens of the past, is the ultimate act of self-compassion. It allows the energy once consumed by grievance to be used for healing and growth. It is the key that unlocks our own heart, allowing us to live more fully and joyfully in the present. As our heart becomes lighter through the practice of forgiveness, we begin to notice a new capacity for joy and contentment. We find we no longer need grand events or great acquisitions to be happy. We start to discover a profound sense of nourishment in the simplest, most ordinary activities of our daily lives. Like the very act of eating, having experienced the profound release that comes from forgiveness, our hearts are lighter, more spacious, and more available to the present moment. With this newfound lightness, we begin to discover that we don't need extraordinary circumstances to experience joy and contentment. We find that the most sacred practices and the deepest nourishment can be found not in a distant temple or a future retreat, but right here at our own kitchen table. We will now explore the art of the mindful meal, a practice that transforms the simple, daily act of eating from a mindless routine into a deep meditation on gratitude, connection, and life itself. For most of us, a meal is something to get through. We eat while standing over the kitchen sink, while driving our car, while scrolling through our phones, or while staring at a screen. We eat a sandwich at our desk, our minds focused on the next email, not on the bread in our hands. Food has become mere fuel, and mealtimes are just refueling stops in our busy schedules. In this rush, we lose all connection. We are disconnected from the food itself, from the earth that produced it, and from our own bodies. We no longer truly taste our food, and we no longer hear the subtle signals of hunger and fullness our bodies are trying to send us. We eat out of habit, out of stress, out of boredom, and we wonder why we feel so perpetually unsatisfied. The practice of mindful eating is the gentle path back to connection. It is an invitation to a feast for all the senses. And for the soul, the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught this practice with the beautiful example of eating a tangerine. Imagine you are holding a single tangerine in the palm of your hand. Before you rush to eat it, you are invited to simply look at it. As you look deeply, you can begin a powerful contemplation. This tangerine did not appear from nowhere. In this small fruit, you can see the sun, whose rays gave it sweetness and color. You can see the clouds, which provided the life-giving rain. You can see the rich, dark earth that nourished the roots of the tangerine tree. You can see the farmer who planted the tree, who protected it from pests, and who toiled under the hot sun. You can see the hands of the person who picked this very fruit, the person who drove the truck to bring it to the market, and the person who arranged it for sale. The entire cosmos, in all its interconnected wonder, has conspired to bring this single tangerine to your hand. When you see this, the tangerine is no longer just a snack. It becomes a miracle. It is a manifestation of life itself. Holding this sense of wonder, you can begin the act of eating. You slowly begin to peel the tangerine. You notice the bright color of the peel, the tiny pores that release a fragrant mist into the air. You pay attention to the sound the peel makes as it separates from the fruit. You bring it to your nose and inhale its fresh, citrus scent. You are fully present with the act of peeling. Then, you gently separate one segment. You look at it, this perfect little crescent of juice and pulp. You place it in your mouth, but you don't chew yet. You just hold it there for a moment, feeling its texture. Then, as you begin to chew, you give your full attention to the explosion of taste and sensation, the sweetness, the tanginess, the coolness of the juice flooding your mouth. You chew slowly, savoring every part of the experience. You are not thinking about the past or the future. For this one moment, you are simply one with the tangerine. You are truly eating. In this mindful act, you are ingesting not just the vitamins and minerals, but the sun, the rain, the earth, and the labor of many beings. Eating becomes an act of profound communion. This deep practice can be brought to any meal you eat. It does not require you to sit in a lotus posture or to chant. It only requires your gentle, focused attention. You can begin by taking a moment before you eat. Pause. Take 3 conscious breaths. Look at the food on your plate. Acknowledge its journey to you. Silently give thanks to the plants, the animals, the farmers, the cooks, and all the elements that have contributed to this meal. This simple pause breaks the momentum of mindlessness and brings a sense of intention and gratitude to your meal. As you begin to eat, try to engage all of your senses. Notice the different colors and shapes on your plate. Before you take your first bite, take a moment to smell the aromas. When you put the food in your mouth, have slowly. It is said we should drink our solids and chew our liquids. Chewing slowly not only helps with digestion, but it allows us to fully taste our food and gives our body time to register that it is being fed. A simple and powerful practice is to put your fork or spoon down between each bite. This one small act can dramatically slow down the pace of your eating and bring you into a much more intimate relationship with your meal. Try eating the first 5 or 10 minutes of your meal in silence. In a world of constant noise and distraction, silence can feel uncomfortable at first, but it is a powerful teacher. Without the distraction of conversation or screens, you are left with only the direct experience of eating. You will notice flavors and textures you had never perceived before. You will also become much more aware of the state of your own mind. You will see its tendency to wander, and you will have another opportunity to gently guide it back to the present moment, to the sensations of eating. Through this practice, we also become more attuned to the wisdom of our own bodies. We learn to distinguish between true physical hunger and the emotional cravings that so often drive us to eat. Physical hunger comes on gradually and is open to different types of food. Emotional hunger often comes on suddenly, is linked to a difficult feeling like stress or sadness, and craves a very specific type of comfort food. When you feel the urge to eat, you can pause and ask your body with kindness, what am I truly hungry for? Sometimes the answer will be food, but other times you might discover you are hungry for rest, for comfort, for a walk outside, or for a meaningful conversation. Mindful eating helps you to hear the answer and to nourish yourself in the way you truly need. To eat mindfully is to honor the great gift of food and the intricate web of life that provides it. It is an act of love for our bodies, which work so tirelessly for us. It is an act of peace, a moment of refuge and sanity in a chaotic world. It teaches us that enlightenment is not something to be found only in a cave or on a mountaintop. It can be found in a simple bowl of rice if we are present enough to see it. Just as we learn to bring mindfulness to the nourishment of our bodies, we can also bring this same quality of awareness to the way we nourish each other through communication. The words we use can be junk food for the soul, or they can be a source of profound healing and connection. Learning to speak and listen with mindfulness is the next step in bringing our practice off the cushion and into our relationships. Having learned to nourish our bodies with mindful eating, we now turn our attention to how we nourish our relationships through the practice of mindful communication. Words are among the most powerful forces in the universe. They can be daggers that inflict deep and lasting wounds, or they can be balms that soothe and heal. They can build walls of separation and misunderstanding, or they can build bridges of connection and empathy. Most of the time, we use this incredible power unconsciously. We speak out of habit, out of reactivity, out of a desire to prove ourselves right or to fill an uncomfortable silence. The practice of right speech, or samavaka, is a core element of the Buddhist path. It invites us to bring the same quality of mindful awareness that we bring to our breath and our food, to the words we speak and the way we listen. It is the art of using communication as a tool for peace. The path of mindful speech is often guided by a set of gates or filters. Before we speak, we are encouraged to pause and ask ourselves if our words can pass through these gates. The first gate is it true? This is the foundation of all healthy communication. It calls on us to abandon falsehood, exaggeration, and deception. It encourages a commitment to honesty and integrity in all our interactions. Even so-called white lies, told to avoid discomfort, can slowly erode the trust that is essential for genuine connection. Speaking the truth, with sincerity and clarity, creates a ground of safety and reliability in our relationships. But truth alone is not enough. A statement can be true, but if it is spoken with cruelty, it becomes a weapon. This leads us to the second gate. Is it kind? This gate asks us to abandon harsh, abusive, or insulting language. It is an invitation to clothe our truth in the soft fabric of compassion. We can learn to express our needs, our disagreements, and even our disappointments without resorting to blame, sarcasm, or contempt. It is the practice of speaking to others in the way we ourselves would wish to be spoken to, with gentleness and respect for their inherent dignity. Even if a statement is both true and kind, it may still be unskillful. This brings us to the third gate. Is it beneficial or necessary? This gate has two important aspects. First, It asks us to refrain from speech that is divisive, particularly gossip. When we speak about someone who is not present, we should ask ourselves, is this conversation bringing people closer together, or is it creating suspicion and discord? Gossip often creates a false sense of intimacy between the speakers at the expense of a third person, poisoning the well of community. Second, this gate encourages us to abandon idle chatter. In a world filled with noise, we often speak simply to fill space, without any real purpose. This clutters our own minds and the minds of others. This gate invites us to value purposeful speech and to become more comfortable with the power of silence. Finally, there is a fourth, more subtle gate. Is it the right time? A statement can be true, kind, and beneficial, but if spoken at the wrong time or in the wrong context, it can be completely ineffective or even cause harm. Offering unsolicited advice to someone who is in the midst of venting their grief, for example, is unskillful. The truth may be correct, but the person is not ready or able to receive it. This gate requires the cultivation of sensitivity, patience, and a deep awareness of the other person's emotional state. It is the most refined aspect of skillful speech. A story from the life of the Buddha perfectly illustrates this nuanced approach. A prince named Abhaya, prompted by a rival teacher, went to the Buddha to ask him a clever question. "Venerable Sir," he asked, "do you ever say things that are displeasing and unwelcome to others?" The prince expected a simple yes or no, hoping to trap the Buddha in a contradiction. The Buddha, knowing the prince's intent, replied that there was no simple answer. He then explained his own filter for speech, using the powerful analogy of a baby with a pebble in its throat. A compassionate caregiver, seeing the baby choking, would not hesitate to force its mouth open and pull out the pebble, even if it caused the baby to cry and bleed a little. The action is temporarily painful and unwelcome, but it is done out of immense love, and for the baby's ultimate well-being. The Buddha then clarified his own code of conduct. If he knows a statement is untrue, unbeneficial, and unpleasant, he does not say it. If he knows it is true, but unbeneficial and unpleasant, he also does not say it. But if he knows a statement is true, beneficial, and unpleasant, he knows the right time to say it. Like the caregiver removing the pebble, the same logic applies to pleasant speech. He refrains from speech that is pleasant but untrue or unbeneficial. Only when speech is true, beneficial, and pleasant does he also know the right time to say it. The guiding principles are always truth and benefit, tempered by a deep wisdom about timing. The pleasantness or unpleasantness of the words is a secondary concern. Mindful communication, however, is not just about speaking. It is equally, if not more so, about listening. This is the practice of deep listening. In most of our conversations, we are not truly listening. We are half listening while the other part of our mind is busy formulating our response, our counter-argument, our own story. We listen to reply, not to understand. Deep listening is the practice of setting aside our own agenda and offering the other person the rare and precious gift of our full, non-judgmental presence. Its sole purpose is to help the other person feel heard and to lessen their suffering. When someone is speaking to you, especially from a place of pain or anger, can you listen without interrupting? Can you listen without judging or giving advice? Can you simply be a calm, receptive presence, allowing them to empty their heart? This kind of listening can be incredibly healing. It communicates far more powerfully than words. I see you, I hear you, your experience matters. A key to this practice is to listen for the suffering behind the words. If someone is speaking with anger, instead of reacting to the anger, can you listen for the pain, fear, or disappointment that is fueling it? This allows you to respond from a place of compassion rather than reactivity. Finally, mindful communication involves the wisdom of noble silence. In a world saturated with opinions, noise, and information, knowing when not to speak is a profound skill. Sometimes, the most compassionate and helpful response is simply a silent, supportive presence. Silence allows space for reflection, de-escalates conflict, and demonstrates a comfort with simply being rather than a frantic need for doing. By practicing these skills, passing our words through the four gates, understanding the Buddha's wisdom on skillful speech, offering the gift of deep listening, and embracing noble silence, we can transform our communication. We move from being unconscious purveyors of static and conflict to becoming conscious gardeners, sowing seeds of harmony, understanding, and peace in all of our relationships. When we practice speaking and listening in this way, we become better equipped to navigate all of our relationships, even the most challenging ones. Our next step is to look directly at how we can apply this mindful presence when dealing with those who test our patience and our peace the most, the difficult people in our lives. Having cultivated the skills of mindful speech and deep listening, we are now ready to bring our practice to one of its most challenging and fertile testing grounds, our relationships with difficult people. We all have them in our lives. They may be a critical family member, a demanding boss, a competitive colleague, or an irritable neighbor. These are the people who seem to effortlessly push our buttons, drain our energy, and disturb our peace. Our natural instinct is to avoid them, to complain about them, or to engage them in endless cycles of conflict. The path of wisdom, however, invites us to see these people in a radically different light. It suggests that these difficult people, the ones who act as sandpaper for our soul, are not obstacles to our practice. They are the practice. They are our greatest teachers in disguise, sent to show us exactly where we are still stuck, where our hearts are still closed, and where our freedom is not yet complete. The first profound insight is to understand that a difficult person often acts as a mirror. The intense emotional reaction we have to someone, the powerful irritation, the deep anger, the feeling of being personally attacked, is often a signal about our own inner landscape. The qualities that bother us most in others may be the very qualities we have repressed or denied in ourselves. Or, more commonly, these individuals trigger our deepest, unhealed wounds. A critical person, for example, may activate an old childhood feeling of not being good enough. An arrogant person may trigger our own insecurities about our self-worth. When we find ourselves in the grip of a strong reaction, we can use it as an opportunity for self-inquiry. Instead of focusing all our energy outward on what is wrong with them, we can gently turn inward and ask, what is being activated in me right now? What old story is this person's behavior tapping into? Where in my own body do I feel this reaction? This shifts the dynamic from one of blame to one of self-awareness. The difficult person becomes an unwitting guide, pointing directly to the parts of our own hearts that are calling out for attention and healing. This self-inquiry opens the door to the next stage, cultivating compassion for our enemy. The anger, criticism, negativity, or arrogance that a person displays is almost never about us. It is a manifestation of their own suffering. Happy, peaceful, and fulfilled people do not have a need to put others down, to control, or to create conflict. Difficult behavior is a symptom of a deep inner unease. It is the cry of a wounded heart. When we can begin to see this, it depersonalizes the interaction. We are no longer the target of a personal attack. We are witnessing another being struggle with their own ignorance and pain. This does not mean we excuse their harmful behavior. It means we understand its source. And from that understanding, a space for compassion can open. We can look at this difficult person and silently wish, may you be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way. May you find the peace that you are so desperately and unskillfully seeking. The great Zen master Hakuin provides a legendary example of how to maintain inner peace in the face of extreme difficulty. Hakuin was a revered teacher, living a quiet life of meditation and teaching. One day, a young unmarried woman in the village became pregnant, and her angry parents demanded to know who the father was. To protect her lover, the young woman named the master. Hakuin, the parents, filled with rage and indignation, stormed to the temple, confronted the master in front of his disciples, and accused him of hypocrisy and immorality. Hakuin's entire reputation was shattered in an instant. As they shouted at him, he remained perfectly calm. His only reply was, "Is that so?" When the child was born, the parents brought the baby to Hakuin. "This is your child," they sneered. "You must care for it." Again, Hakuin's only response was, "Is that so?" As he accepted the infant into his arms, he lost his students, his status, and the respect of the entire community, but he cared for the child with immense tenderness, going to neighbors to beg for milk and whatever else the baby needed. He endured the scorn and insults with perfect equanimity. A year later, the young mother, unable to bear her guilt any longer, confessed to her parents that the real father was a young fisherman in the village. The parents were horrified at the injustice they had done. They rushed to Hakuin, bowed down, apologized profusely, and asked for the child back. Hakuin listened to their confession and, as he gently handed the baby back to them, said for a third time, "Is that so?" Hakuin's peace was not dependent on praise or blame, on a good reputation or a bad one. He was like a great mountain, unmoved by the shifting winds of worldly opinion. His response was not one of weakness or passivity. It was a demonstration of absolute freedom from the ego's frantic need to defend itself. He showed us that our inner stability does not have to be conditional on the behavior of others. This brings us to a crucial and practical point. Compassion does not mean being a doormat. It does not mean we must silently endure abuse or allow others to harm us. In fact, sometimes the most compassionate action we can take is to set a firm, clear boundary. Protecting yourself from harm is a fundamental act of wisdom and self-respect. Saying, "I will not allow you to speak to me in that way," or physically removing yourself from a toxic environment, is not a failure of compassion. The key is the inner state from which we set the boundary. Are we acting from a place of reactive hatred and a desire to punish, or are we acting from a place of clarity, self-worth, and even compassion for the other person? By refusing to enable their destructive patterns, setting a boundary from a place of calm strength is profoundly different from lashing out in anger. We can learn to use these difficult interactions as a live, in-the-moment mindfulness practice. When you know you are about to interact with a difficult person, or when you find yourself in the middle of a tense conversation, you can bring your awareness to a few key things. First, feel your body. Feel your feet planted firmly on the ground. Feel the air of your breath moving in and out. This anchors you in the present and prevents your mind from being completely hijacked by the emotional storm. Second, notice your inner reaction. Acknowledge the feeling that arises. This is anger, or this is fear. Just naming it creates a space of awareness. Third, try to listen deeply, not just to the person's words, but to the possible pain behind them. And fourth, before you speak, pause. Give yourself that sacred space to choose your response, rather than letting a knee-jerk reaction choose for you. Every difficult person who crosses our path is offering us a precious, if painful, gift. They are holding up a mirror to our own unfinished business. They are providing us with a real-world opportunity to practice patience, compassion, and wisdom. By learning to meet them with mindfulness, we untie our own inner knots and discover that our peace does not have to be a fragile thing, easily shattered by the words or actions of others. It can become a deep, resilient quality that we carry within us. A portable sanctuary. As we cultivate this inner resilience and learn that our peace is not dependent on external conditions or other people's behavior, we begin to discover a new source of happiness. We realize that we don't need excitement, drama, or constant praise to feel content. In fact, we find a profound and stable joy in the very opposite, in simplicity. Having discovered an inner resilience that does not depend on the approval or behavior of others, we unearth another profound source of peace. We begin to see that the happiness we have been chasing in the external world through possessions, status, and endless experiences is a fleeting and exhausting pursuit. Our culture teaches us that wealth is measured by what we accumulate, but the path of wisdom reveals a different kind of richness. A true wealth found not in having more, but in needing less. This is the liberation of simplicity, the deep contentment known in the East as Thu Duk Tri Tuk, the happiness that comes from having few desires and knowing what is enough. We live in a world that is engineered to make us feel perpetually dissatisfied. The engine of modern consumer culture runs on one simple message, whispered to us 1,000 times a day through advertisements and social media. You are not enough as you are. But this next purchase will fix you. This new phone will make you connected. This new car will make you respected. This new fashion will make you desirable. This new vacation will make you happy. We are conditioned to believe that our inner sense of lack can be filled by something external. And so we enter the endless cycle of wanting. We strive. We'll work. We acquire. For a brief moment, a new purchase gives us a flicker of pleasure, a temporary high, but soon, the novelty fades. The baseline of our happiness returns to where it was, and the gnawing feeling of not enough comes back, now attached to a new object of desire. This is the hedonic treadmill, and it is a recipe for lifelong frustration. The first step in stepping off this treadmill is to practice mindfulness of our own desires. It requires us to learn the crucial difference between a true need and a manufactured want. Our human needs are actually quite simple and finite: clean air and water, nutritious food, shelter from the elements, safety, and meaningful connection with others. Our desire, on the other hand, are infinite. The mind, when left unchecked, is a desire-generating machine. It can always invent a new thing to want, a new experience to crave. When we feel a strong urge to buy something or to chase a new experience, we can learn to pause. We can take a breath and ask ourselves with gentle curiosity, where is this urge coming from? Is this a true need of my body or my heart? Or is this a desire to soothe an uncomfortable feeling, a feeling of boredom, of loneliness, of anxiety, of envy? This simple, mindful pause can break the spell of unconscious consumption. There is a powerful story from ancient Greece that perfectly illustrates this principle of true wealth. The philosopher Diogenes the Cynic had renounced all worldly possessions, believing that a virtuous life was one lived in simple harmony with nature. His only home was a large ceramic jar in the marketplace of Athens. At the same time, the most powerful man in the known world was Alexander the Great, a conqueror of vast empires who commanded immense armies and possessed unimaginable riches. Hearing of the famous philosopher, Alexander, surrounded by his retinue of generals and courtiers, went to visit Diogenes. He found him sitting peacefully by his jar, enjoying the warmth of the morning sun, wanting to impress the philosopher and display his own magnanimity. Alexander made a grand offer. "Diogenes," he said, "I am Alexander the Great. Ask of me any favor you wish, and it shall be yours." Diogenes looked up at the emperor, the most powerful man on earth, and gave a simple reply: "Yes. There is something you can do for me. Please step to one side. You are blocking my sunlight." In that moment, who was the richer man? Was it Alexander, who had conquered the world but still wanted more? Or was it Diogenes, who had nothing, yet was so completely content that the only thing he could possibly want was something that was already freely available to all? Diogenes understood that true freedom is not the power to get whatever you want, but the power to not want what you don't need. His wealth was his lack of desire. It is said that Alexander was so struck by this that he turned to his generals and said, "Truly, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." We often forget the hidden cost of our possessions. We think they will bring us freedom, but more often they bring us new burdens. A bigger house means more rooms to clean, higher taxes to pay, more things that can break. A new car brings worries about scratches, maintenance, and insurance. Our closets become cluttered with clothes we never wear, and our drawers are filled with gadgets we no longer use. Our possessions end up possessing us, our precious mental space, which could be used for creativity, for connection, for peace, becomes occupied by a low-level hum of anxiety about protecting, maintaining, and managing our ever-growing pile of stuff. The act of simplifying, of decluttering our physical environment, has a direct and powerful effect on our inner environment. As we let go of the things we don't need, we create space, we create lightness, we create peace. When we stop chasing the phantom of material happiness, our eyes are opened to the profound and simple joys that are always available, free of charge. We rediscover the deep pleasure of non-material wealth. This is the wealth of a quiet morning, with nothing to do but savor a cup of tea and watch the light change. It is the richness of a deep, uninterrupted conversation with a friend, where you feel truly seen and heard. It is the priceless treasure of walking in nature, feeling the wind on your face, hearing the birds sing, and remembering that you are a part of this beautiful, living earth. It is the immense gift of time and freedom when we are not working so hard to buy things we don't need. We have more time and energy for the people and activities that truly nourish our souls. Living simply is not about deprivation. It is about intention. It is a conscious choice to edit our lives, to curate our space and our time, and to remove everything that is not essential or does not bring us true joy. It is about discovering that the most valuable things in life are not things at all. It is a path away from the noisy, cluttered marketplace of wanting and toward the quiet, spacious sanctuary of a contented heart. As we begin to live more simply and our minds become less cluttered with desires and worries, we are better able to perceive the subtle laws that govern our existence. We start to see a clear connection between our actions and their results, between the seeds we plant and the fruits we harvest. This leads us to a deeper understanding of one of the most fundamental laws of the universe, the law of karma. As we simplify our lives and quiet our minds, we begin to perceive the world with greater clarity. The background noise of constant wanting subsides, and we start to notice the subtle yet profound laws that govern our existence. We see a recurring pattern, a clear and dependable connection between our actions and the quality of our experience. This leads us to an exploration of one of the most widely known, yet frequently misunderstood, principles of Eastern philosophy, the law of karma. The word karma has been absorbed into the global vocabulary, but it is often equated with fate, destiny, or a kind of cosmic system of punishment and reward. Overseen by an invisible judge, this popular understanding can inspire fear and a sense of helpless fatalism. The Buddhist understanding of karma, or kama in the original Pali language, is something far more practical, empowering, and scientific. It is not about divine judgment. It is a simple, impersonal, and natural law of cause and effect. It is the law of action and result. The word karma literally means action, but it does not refer to all actions. It specifically refers to intentional action. The great power of this law resides in the quality of our intention, our volition, our cetana. It is the intention behind an act that gives it its karmic weight. These intentional actions are performed in three ways: through the body, through speech, and most fundamentally, through the mind, our thoughts, our désir, our aversions. These are all potent karmic actions. In fact, our thoughts are the very seeds from which our words and our physical deeds grow. A mind filled with thoughts of kindness and generosity will naturally produce kind words and generous actions. A mind clouded by thoughts of hatred and greed will inevitably lead to harsh words and selfish deeds. Perhaps the clearest way to understand karma is through the simple analogy of a farmer. Imagine a farmer standing in his field. In his hands, he holds different kinds of seeds. He has seeds for nourishing rice, seeds for sweet corn, and also the seeds of bitter weeds. The farmer is a conscious agent. He has the freedom to choose which seeds he will plant in the soil of his field. This act of choosing and planting is his action, his karma. Once the seeds are sown, he cannot see the results immediately. The process is hidden for a time. The seeds require the right conditions: sun, soil, and water to grow. But the potential for the plant is contained entirely within the seed. A seed of corn can only ever grow into a stalk of corn. It cannot, under any circumstances, grow into a rice plant or a thorny weed. The DNA of the result is encoded in the initial action. When harvest time arrives, the farmer reaps exactly what he sowed. If he planted nourishing rice, he enjoys a harvest of nourishing rice. If he chose to plant bitter weeds, his field will be overrun with bitter weeds, and he cannot be surprised or feel unjustly punished. The harvest is the natural, impersonal, and inevitable consequence of his original, intentional action. We are all this farmer. Our mind is the field. Our intentions are the seeds, and our experiences in life, the happiness and sorrow, the peace and conflict, the connection and loneliness, are the harvest. When we plant seeds of love, generosity, patience, and understanding, we are creating the conditions for a future harvest of happiness and peace. When we plant seeds of greed, hatred, anger, and delusion, we are creating the conditions for a future harvest of suffering for ourselves and others. It is crucial to understand that this is not a moral law imposed from the outside. It is a natural law, as impersonal and dependable as gravity. Gravity does not punish you for stepping off a cliff. It simply operates. The law of gravity is neutral. Similarly, the law of karma is neutral. It does not reward or punish. It simply reflects skillful actions, known as kusala karma, which are rooted in intentions of non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion, naturally lead to favorable, pleasant results. Unskillful actions, akusala karma, rooted in the mental poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, naturally lead to unfavorable, painful results. There is no divine being keeping score. The action contains its own result, just as the seed contains the future plant. This is where the teaching on karma becomes so incredibly empowering, for it frees us from two great errors: the error of blaming others for our unhappiness, and the error of fatalism. While we are certainly influenced by our environment and by the actions of others, the ultimate responsibility for the quality of our lives rests with the quality of our own minds. But this does not mean that our future is predetermined by our past. This is the most common and dangerous misinterpretation of karma. The truth is twofold. We are, in this present moment, the heirs of our past karma, the circumstances we are born into, our innate talents, our deep-seated personality traits. These are the fruits of seeds we have sown in the past. We must learn to accept this harvest with wisdom and equanimity. Just as the enlightened monk Angulimala accepted the stones thrown at him by the villagers. This is our inheritance. But, and this is the most liberating truth, we are also, in this very same present moment, the creators of our future karma. We are the farmer standing in the field right now. While we cannot change the seeds we planted yesterday, we have complete freedom over which seeds we choose to plant in this very moment. Are we planting seeds of mindfulness or seeds of distraction? Are we planting seeds of kindness or seeds of irritation? Are we planting seeds of generosity or seeds of selfishness? Every moment offers us a choice. Every conscious breath, every kind word, every generous thought is the planting of a wholesome seed that will shape the harvest of our future. Our future is not written in stone. We are writing it with every intentional thought, word, and deed. This understanding places our destiny firmly back in our own hands. We are not puppets of fate. We are powerful co-creators of our reality. We cannot control everything that happens to us, but we have complete power over how we choose to respond, and that response is the new seed we plant. Understanding karma, then, is not a reason for fear, but a call to mindfulness. It is an invitation to become a conscious and deliberate gardener of our own heart and mind, to skillfully cultivate a future of peace, happiness, and freedom for ourselves and for all beings. This understanding of karma, of skillfully navigating between cause and effect, naturally leads us to a way of life that avoids extremes. We learn not to punish ourselves for past unskillful actions, nor to indulge heedlessly in sensual pleasure, hoping it will bring happiness. This balanced approach, this path that walks between the poles of severe asceticism and mindless indulgence, is known as the middle way. Our exploration of karma has shown us the profound power of our intentions and the direct link between our actions and our experiences. This understanding naturally guides us away from a life of heedless action, but it also steers us away from a life of fearful inaction. It places us on a path of skillful and wise engagement with the world. This path, the very first teaching the Buddha gave after his enlightenment, is the cornerstone of his entire philosophy. It is the noble middle way, the Majjhima Patipada, a path of exquisite balance that avoids the two great extremes that trap so many spiritual seekers. To truly understand the middle way, we must look at the Buddha's own life, for his journey was a direct, personal experiment with these two extremes. He was born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, and his father, The king surrounded him with every imaginable form of sensual pleasure. He lived in magnificent palaces for each season, draped in the finest silks, entertained by the most beautiful music, and fed the most delicious foods. He was intentionally shielded from any sight of suffering, sickness, old age, or death. This was the extreme of sensual indulgence, a life dedicated to the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Yet, in the midst of this luxury, the prince felt a deep spiritual emptiness. He recognized that pleasure was fleeting and unreliable. It could not provide true, lasting happiness or security from the fundamental realities of life. He saw that a life chasing pleasure was a life of dependency on external conditions, a life of subtle, gnawing anxiety. And so, at the age of 29, he committed to a great renunciation. He left his palace, his family, and his royal life behind to seek a deeper truth. He became a wandering ascetic, and for 6 years, he threw himself into the other extreme, the extreme of self-mortification. He believed, as many did at the time, that by torturing the body, he could liberate the spirit. He practiced the most severe austerities imaginable. He held his breath until he felt violent, splitting pains in his head. He fasted until his ribs stuck out like the rafters of a dilapidated shed, and his spine could be seen through the skin of his stomach. He slept on beds of thorns and exposed his body to the extremes of heat and cold. He pushed his body and his willpower to the absolute limit of human endurance. But this path also failed. He found that by torturing his body, he was only weakening his mind. A mind in a weakened, exhausted body cannot achieve the concentration, clarity, and brilliance needed for profound insight. He was punishing his instrument instead of tuning it. Near death from starvation, he collapsed by a river. He was found by a young village girl named Sujata, who, seeing his emaciated state, offered him a bowl of nourishing milk rice. Siddhartha realized that his 6 years of extreme asceticism had been fruitless. He remembered a time in his childhood when he had been sitting under a rose apple tree, and his mind had naturally entered a state of joyful, peaceful concentration. He understood that this natural well-being was not something to be feared or rejected, but was a necessary foundation for awakening. He accepted Sujata's offering, breaking his long fast. His 5 ascetic companions, seeing him take solid food, were disgusted and abandoned him, believing he had given up the spiritual quest. But in reality, his quest was just beginning. By nourishing his body, he had discovered the middle way. With his strength restored, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, with a mind that was neither lax nor overly tense, and entered the deep meditation that would lead to his full enlightenment. The Buddha later taught this principle to a monk named Sona, who was practicing with such extreme, relentless effort that his feet were cracked and bleeding, and his mind was filled with discouragement. The Buddha, knowing that Sona had been a skilled lute player in his lay life, asked him, "Sona, when the strings of your lute were too tight, did it produce a beautiful and resonant sound?" Sona replied, "No, venerable sir. It would snap The Buddha then asked, "And when the strings were too loose, did it produce a beautiful sound?" "No, Venerable Sir," Sona said. "It would only produce a dull thud." And what was necessary, Sona, to create beautiful music, Venerable Sir? The strings had to be tuned to a pitch that was not too tight and not too loose. They had to be evenly balanced. The Buddha smiled. So it is, Sona, with the spiritual path. If your effort is too strained, it leads to restlessness and agitation. If your effort is too slack, it leads to laziness and drowsiness. You must cultivate a balance of energy, an exquisite tuning of the faculties, to create the beautiful music of awakening. This parable of the lute string is a perfect guide for our own practice. In meditation, we are not trying to violently suppress our thoughts, which is the tight string, nor are we simply letting our minds drift away in daydreams, which is the loose string. We are applying a gentle, consistent, and balanced effort, an alert and relaxed attention. This principle extends to every aspect of our lives. The middle way is a path of moderation. In our work, it steers us between the extremes of obsessive workaholism and unproductive idleness. In our physical health, it guides us between the self-punishment of extreme diets and the heedlessness of overindulgence. It is about finding a sustainable, wise, and nourishing rhythm for our lives. The middle way also applies to our way of thinking. Our minds have a strong tendency towards dualism, towards seeing the world in rigid, black and white categories, good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure, love and hate. We are constantly judging our experiences, pushing away what we dislike and grasping at what we like. The middle way in thinking is a path of non-judgmental awareness. It sees that reality is far more complex and nuanced than our rigid labels. It recognizes that good and bad are often relative, and that seemingly opposite things are often deeply interconnected. It is the path of seeing things as they are, without the added layer of our preferences and aversions. The middle way is not a path of lazy compromise or dull mediocrity. It is a razor's edge of balance, requiring constant mindfulness and wisdom. It is the most effective, sustainable, and joyful path to awakening because it honors our full humanity. It recognizes that we have both a body and a mind, and both need to be cared for and respected. By walking this balanced path, with a mind that is neither too tight nor too loose, our perception becomes exceptionally clear. We begin to see past the surface of things and perceive the intricate web of connections that binds everything together. We start to see ourselves not as separate entities, but as integral parts of a vast, interconnected whole. This direct seeing of oneness is the discovery of interbeing, walking the balanced middle way, with a mind that is both relaxed and alert. We develop a clarity that allows us to see beyond the surface of things. The world, which once appeared to be a collection of separate, disconnected objects and beings, begins to reveal its true nature. We start to perceive the intricate, invisible threads that weave everything together into a single, seamless tapestry. We arrive at the direct seeing of a truth that is both profoundly simple and radically transformative, the truth of interbeing, This is not a complex philosophical theory, but a deep insight into the nature of reality. It is the positive expression of the wisdom of no self. If we are empty of a separate, isolated self, then how do we exist? We exist in profound connection with everything else. We enter. To understand this, let us begin with a simple contemplation, a practice taught by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. Take a moment to look at a single sheet of paper. We call it a sheet of paper. We see it as a single, separate object. But let us look more deeply. Where does it come from? To have this paper, we first need a tree. To have a tree, we need the earth to nourish its roots, the rain to water it, and the sun to help it grow through photosynthesis. So, as we look at the paper, we can see the sunshine, the clouds, and the soil within it. If we were to remove the sun, or the rain, or the earth, this sheet of paper could not exist. But let us look even more deeply. A tree does not cut itself down. We need a logger, and the logger needs parents, and the logger needs food to eat, to have the strength to work. So the farmer who grew the food and the logger's parents are also in the sheet of paper. Then there is the person who drove the truck to transport the logs, the workers in the paper mill who operated the machinery, the person who sold you the paper, their daily bread, their hopes, and their dreams are all subtly present in this seemingly simple object. If you continue to look, you can see that the entire cosmos is present in this one sheet of paper. It is empty of a separate, independent self, but it is full of the whole universe. This is interbeing. The paper interis with the sun. The logger interis with the cloud. Now, let us turn this same deep looking upon ourselves. We say, we have a strong feeling of being a separate, independent entity. But are we? We are made of the food we have eaten, which is the sun, the rain, and the earth. We are made of our parents and our ancestors. Their DNA is alive in our cells. We are made of our teachers, our friends, and our enemies. Their words and actions have shaped our thoughts and our character. Our ideas are not truly our ideas. They have come from the books we have read, the culture we inhabit, the conversations we have had. If we were to remove all of these non-me elements, if we removed our family, our culture, the air we breathe, the food we eat, the earth that supports us, what would be left of me? Nothing at all. Just like the sheet of paper, we are empty of a separate self, but we are full of the entire cosmos. We are not just in the universe is in us. There is a magnificent and ancient image from the Avatamsaka Sutra that beautifully illustrates this vision of reality. It is the image of Indra's net, imaginaire vaste, cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there is a single, perfectly clear and multifaceted jewel. The net has an infinite number of these jewels. The most wondrous quality of this net is that if you look closely into the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire infinite net. And not just that, but each reflection in that one jewel also contains the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, ad infinitum, In this image, each jewel represents a single thing in the universe: a person, a thought, a flower, a speck of dust. Each jewel exists only because of its relationship to all the others. It has no independent existence. It perfectly reflects every other jewel, and at the same time, its own unique existence contributes to the reflection in every other jewel. The part contains the whole, and the whole contains the part. This is the ultimate vision of interbeing. There is no separation, only a ceaseless, shimmering, interconnected dance of mutual reflection. When we begin to live with this understanding, it transforms everything. It is no longer an abstract philosophy. It becomes the basis for a profound ethics of care and responsibility. The division between self and other, which is the root of all conflict, begins to dissolve. We realize that harming another is, in a very real sense, harming ourselves. The pain we inflict on another being is a wound on the fabric of the net. And since we are part of that net, we are wounding ourselves. When we see a forest being clear-cut, we understand it is not an external environmental problem. It is the destruction of our own lungs. When we see a river being polluted, we understand it is the poisoning of our own bloodstream. When we see another person suffering from injustice or poverty, we understand that their suffering diminishes our own humanity. The idea of a purely selfish act becomes a logical impossibility. In the same way, any act of kindness or healing ripples out through the entire net. Helping another being is helping ourselves. The joy we bring to another reflects back on us. The boundary between self-interest and altruism collapses. They become one and the same thing. This is the ultimate foundation for a truly ecological and social consciousness. One rooted not in guilt or duty, but in a clear-seeing wisdom of our profound connection. Living from the wisdom of interbeing is the ultimate antidote to the pervasive loneliness and alienation of the modern world. It is the realization that we are never truly separate. We are always held and supported by the vast web of life. We are part of the soil, part of the stars, part of each other. Our every breath connects us to the trees. Our every action sends a vibration through Indra's magnificent, jeweled net. When our heart and mind are saturated with this understanding of interbeing, our actions naturally begin to change. We no longer need to force ourselves to be good. Instead, we feel a natural, spontaneous urge to cultivate qualities that support this web of life and to weed out the qualities that harm it. This leads us to the practice of consciously tending to the garden of our own mind. When we begin to see the world through the lens of interbeing, when we truly feel in our hearts that we are all part of a single, interconnected web of life, a profound shift occurs. The question is no longer just, how can I find peace for myself, but how can my life contribute to the well-being of the whole? This shift in perspective naturally inspires us to become more intentional about the inner world we are cultivating, because we understand that the state of our own mind inevitably ripples out and affects everything around us. This leads us to the practice of becoming a skillful and compassionate gardener of the mind. Imagine your mind is a garden. For most of our lives, we have let this garden grow wild. We have been unaware of what has been planted, and we have allowed the winds of conditioning to sow whatever seeds they carry. As a result, The garden is often overgrown with the persistent weeds of our habitual negative tendencies, the thorny weeds of anger and ill will, the strangling vines of greed and craving, and the dense, shadowy undergrowth of fear and delusion. To wish for a peaceful mind without tending to it is like wishing for a beautiful rose garden without ever pulling a weed or planting a seed. The path of practice is the art of actively, consciously, and patiently cultivating this inner garden. The work of a gardener is twofold. First, there is the work of weeding. We must learn to recognize the unwholesome states when they arise, when a flash of anger, a pang of jealousy, or a surge of greed appears in the mind. Our mindfulness practice allows us to see it clearly. We see it not as an evil intruder to be violently ripped out, but simply as a weed. We acknowledge its presence without judgment, and then we gently, skillfully, withhold our energy from it. We choose not to water that seed. We don't indulge in the angry story. We don't feed the jealous thought. By not giving it our energy, we allow it to wither on its own. The second, and more joyful, task of the gardener is to plant and nurture beautiful flowers. This is the active cultivation of wholesome mental states. It is not enough to simply stop the negative. We must actively cultivate the positive. The teachings offer a beautiful framework for this cultivation, known as the 4 divine abodes, or the Brahma Viharas. These are 4 boundless qualities of the heart that we can deliberately develop. We have already explored the first 2, loving kindness, metta, the wish for all beings to be happy, and compassion, karuna, the heart's trembling response to suffering. Now, we will plant the final 2 flowers in our garden. The third flower is sympathetic joy, or mudita. This is the practice of genuinely rejoicing in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. Its direct opposite, a very common weed in the human mind, is envy or jealousy. So often, when we hear of someone else's success, a promotion, a happy relationship, a beautiful achievement, our first reaction is a subtle clenching of the heart. We may feel diminished, as if their happiness somehow takes away from our own. Mudita is the direct antidote to this poison. It is the conscious choice to celebrate with others. It springs from the understanding that happiness is not a limited resource. The light from someone else's candle does not diminish our own. In fact, learning to rejoice in the happiness of others opens up an infinite source of joy for ourselves. Instead of having only our own small successes to celebrate, we can now share in the joy of everyone we meet. To practice this, you can bring to mind someone you know who is currently experiencing good fortune. Acknowledge any feeling of envy that may arise, and then consciously shift your perspective, offering the sincere wish, "I am so happy for you. May your joy and success continue and grow." The fourth and most profound flower in this garden is equanimity, or upekkha. This is often the most misunderstood quality. It is not cold indifference, apathy, or a detached lack of caring. Equanimity is a state of profound balance, a spacious and unshakable peace that can hold all of life's experiences without being thrown off course. Life is constantly presenting us with what are called the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain. fame and disrepute. Our ordinary mind is like a small boat tossed about by these winds, constantly elated by praise and crushed by blame, grasping at pleasure and recoiling from pain. The mind of equanimity is like a great, deep mountain. The winds still blow, but the mountain remains stable, vast, and unmoved. Equanimity is born of deep wisdom. It is rooted in a clear understanding of impermanence and karma. We remain balanced in the face of pleasure and success because we know they are impermanent. We don't cling because we know they will change. We remain balanced in the face of pain and failure because we know they too are impermanent. And they will also pass. And with regard to others, equanimity understands that all beings are the owners of their own karma. While we offer them our boundless love and compassion, we cannot control their choices or their ultimate destinies. We cannot make them happy. We cannot prevent their suffering if their actions lead them there. We do what we can to help, and then we let go, offering them the spaciousness of our non-interference and our balanced, loving presence. The phrase to cultivate for equanimity is, all beings are the heirs of their own actions. Their happiness or unhappiness depends on their own deeds, not on my wishes for them. The energy that allows us to perform this steady work of gardening is known as virya. This is often translated as diligence or perseverance. But it is not a grim, joyless, white-knuckled effort. It is the wise and balanced energy of the lute string, not too tight, not too loose. It is the joyful persistence of a gardener who loves their work. It is the steady commitment to show up every day, to gently pull a few weeds, to water a few flowers, to trust in the process of growth. Even when results aren't immediately visible, the mind is not a fixed, unchangeable entity. It is a dynamic process, a vast potential. What grows in it depends entirely on what we cultivate. If we are lazy and mindless, it will become a tangled thicket of weeds. But if we become skillful and patient gardeners, we can transform it into a place of extraordinary beauty, peace, and fragrance, a sanctuary for ourselves, and a place of refuge that offers its shade and beauty to all who pass by. When we have diligently tended this inner garden, a profound sense of peace begins to settle within us. It is not a peace that depends on the absence of noise or problems in the outside world. It is a deep, unshakable stillness that we can find even in the midst of life's greatest storms. This is the discovery of the thunderous silence within. Having diligently tended to the garden of our mind, weeding out the unwholesome and nurturing the wholesome, a new quality begins to permeate our experience. It is a sense of profound peace, a deep and abiding quietness. But this is not the kind of quietness we usually think of. Our common idea of peace is a fragile thing. We imagine a silent mountain retreat, a deserted beach at sunset, a life free from problems, conflict, and noise. We believe peace is an external condition, a place we must escape to. But this kind of peace is fleeting and dependent. The moment the silence is broken, the moment a problem arises, our peace is shattered. The path of wisdom leads us to the discovery of a different kind of peace, a peace that is not so easily broken. It is an inner stillness that we can carry with us everywhere. It is the peace of the eye of the storm, we must first distinguish between outer silence and inner stillness. You can be in a soundproof room, a place of absolute external silence, and yet your mind can be a raging tempest of anxiety, obsessive planning, and looping regrets. Conversely, you can be in the midst of a noisy city street, surrounded by the cacophony of traffic and crowds, and yet maintain a core of profound inner stillness, an unshakable calm. True peace, therefore, is not about manipulating the outside world to be silent. It is about cultivating a sanctuary of stillness within our own hearts, a sanctuary that remains untouched by the chaos of the world. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this truth perfectly. A wise king once announced a contest for the artists of his kingdom. He offered a magnificent prize for the painting that could most perfectly depict a state of peace. Many great artists submitted their work. The judges narrowed the field down to 2 final contenders. The first painting was a picture of a perfectly calm, mirror-like mountain lake. It flawlessly reflected the towering, snow-capped bergs above it, all under a clear, peaceful blue sky. Anyone who saw it immediately thought of peace. It was a serene and beautiful image. The second painting was its complete opposite. It depicted a rugged mountain landscape under a dark, stormy sky. Rain was lashing down, lightning split the heavens, and a ferocious, roaring waterfall crashed down the side of a cliff. It seemed to be a picture of pure violence and turmoil. Everyone who saw it was confused as to why it was even considered a finalist. But the king, with a wise smile, chose the second painting as the winner. Why, the people asked, bewildered. The king guided them closer to the painting of the storm. "Look here," he said, pointing to a small detail they had missed. There, behind the thundering, violent sheet of water, nestled in a small crevice in the rock, was a tiny bush. And in that bush, a mother bird had built her nest. She sat there, on her eggs, her small body radiating a sense of absolute calm, perfectly safe and sheltered, completely undisturbed by the raging storm around her. This, the king declared, is the meaning of true peace. Peace is not a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. Peace is to be in the midst of all those things and still be calm in your heart. This is the peace we cultivate on the path. It is the thunderous silence, the stillness that is not empty, but full of life. It is the discovery of the bird's nest behind the waterfall of our own busy lives. And how do we find this nest? We find it by bringing the quality of meditative awareness into all our daily activities. We learn that meditation is not just something we do for 20 minutes on a cushion. Our whole life can become a meditation. When you are washing the dishes, you can be lost in thought, your mind 1,000 miles away. The act, a mindless chore, or you can bring your full attention to it. You can feel the warmth of the water on your hands, see the shimmering colors in the soap bubbles, hear the sound of the water rinsing the plates. In that moment of full presence, with the simple act of washing dishes, your mind becomes calm and centered. The dishes are being washed, and you are tasting peace. You have found the bird's nest. When you are walking, you can feel each footstep as it connects with the earth. When you are drinking your tea, you can be fully present with its warmth and aroma. Any activity, no matter how mundane, when performed with this quality of undivided attention, becomes a gateway to inner stillness. This stillness is not a dull, blank, or empty state. On the contrary, it is incredibly vibrant and alive. It is the stillness of a perfectly spinning top, which appears motionless yet is filled with dynamic energy. This is the quality of samadhi, or deep concentration, as we train the mind to rest on a single point. Like the breath, it becomes less scattered and more unified. The frantic, flickering energy of the distracted mind becomes focused and powerful. Like a laser beam, a mind that has cultivated this quality of samadhi is not easily swayed. It develops a deep resilience and stability. The worldly winds of praise and blame may blow, but the mind remains centered and at ease. This unshakable inner calm is the bedrock of the spiritual life. It is the stable foundation upon which the house of wisdom is built. It allows us to face life's inevitable challenges, sickness, loss, and our own mortality, not with fear and panic, but with a courageous and open heart. We learn that we can be with pain without being overwhelmed by it. We can experience sorrow without being drowned in it. We have found a refuge within ourselves that is always accessible, no matter what is happening on the outside. This is the discovery of the peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. This deep inner stillness, this unshakable peace, is not the final goal in itself. It is the fertile ground from which the flower of wisdom fully blooms. It is the foundation for a life lived with effortless grace and profound freedom. But we must remember that this state is not a static destination to be reached and then held onto forever. Awakening itself is a continuous, living process. This brings us to our final exploration, understanding that peace is not a destination, but that awakening is a journey. We have journeyed together through the vast and intricate landscape of the mind. We have tended to its garden, learned to navigate its storms, and discovered within it a sanctuary of deep, thunderous stillness. It is tempting to think of this peace as the final destination, the ultimate prize at the end of a long and difficult road. We might imagine that the goal of all this practice is to arrive at a state of perfect, unshakable tranquility, a permanent blissful retirement from the troubles of the world. But the path of wisdom reveals a final, subtle truth. There is no final destination. Peace is not a place you arrive at. Awakening is not a graduation ceremony. It is a journey without end, a continuous process of waking up, moment by moment by moment. Our minds are conditioned to think in terms of goals. We climb a mountain to get to the summit. We run a race to cross the finish line. We apply this same logic to our spiritual life. And in doing so, we create a new form of striving, a subtle anxiety about getting there. We can become enlightenment chasers, constantly measuring our progress, feeling discouraged when we have a difficult day, and believing that true peace is always just around the corner. The path invites us to shift this perspective entirely. It teaches us that happiness is not found at the end of the path. Happiness is the path. The goal is the way itself. Every mindful breath is an arrival, Every act of kindness is a taste of enlightenment. Every moment of non-judgmental awareness is the destination. When we truly understand this, the frantic striving falls away, replaced by a joyful, patient, and curious engagement with the unfolding process of our own lives. The great journey of awakening has been beautifully mapped in the Zen tradition through a series of 10 images known as the 10 bulls, or the ox herding pictures. They depict the stages of a practitioner's path. In the beginning, we see the herdsman, lost and confused, searching for his lost ox, which represents his true nature. Then he sees the traces of the ox, the teachings, the path. With practice, he gets his first glimpse of the ox itself, a moment of insight, a first awakening. Then follows the struggle of catching and taming the wild ox, which is his own untrained mind. He must struggle with the habits of his ego. Gradually, through patient practice, he tames the ox, and they become harmonious. He is seen riding the ox home, playing a flute, a picture of effortless unity. The journey deepens. In the next stage, the ox itself is forgotten. The herdsman is alone. Serene. The distinction between the practitioner and his true nature has dissolved. Following this is an image of a simple, empty circle. This represents the ultimate state of emptiness, the realization of no self, where all concepts and distinctions have vanished. Many spiritual traditions might stop here, at the peak of absolute, transcendent realization. But this is not the end of the Zen journey. The 9th picture shows a return to the world. A gnarled, ancient tree is blooming. A stream is flowing. The world of form reappears, but it is now seen with enlightened eyes. It is seen as miraculous, just as it is. And then comes the 10th and final, most important picture. It is called In the World, or returning to the marketplace. The enlightened herdsman, now depicted as a jolly, pot-bellied sage, returns to the town. He is barefoot. His robes are open at the chest, and he carries a gourd of wine. He mingles with ordinary people, with fishmongers and innkeepers. The caption says, "His thatched cottage has fallen to pieces." He is bare-chested and barefooted. He comes to the market. He is daubed with mud and ashes, but a smile fills his face. Without resorting to the secret powers of the gods, he causes the withered trees to bloom. This is the ultimate expression of awakening. It is not an escape from the world, but a full, compassionate, and joyful re-engagement with it. The goal is not to remain in a state of empty bliss, but to bring the wisdom and freedom of that state back into the messy, beautiful, ordinary world to help all beings. Enlightenment is not measured by how long you can sit in blissful meditation, but by how you interact with the cashier at the grocery store, how you respond to a crying child, how you meet the challenges of your daily life. This points to the truth of what some call enlightenment after enlightenment, a moment of deep insight, or Ganzo, is not the end of the work. It is the beginning of the real work. The real practice is to integrate that insight into your life. How do you live this understanding of no self when you are stuck in traffic? How do you embody into being when you are having a disagreement with your partner? How do you manifest compassion when you are paying your bills? Life itself becomes the continuous practice of living our deepest wisdom. To walk this endless path, it is essential to cultivate what is known as beginner's mind, or Shoshin. The expert's mind is often closed. It thinks it knows the answers. It is full of opinions, concepts, and expectations. It is no longer open to learning. The beginner's mind, however, is empty, open, and full of wonder. It is ready for anything. It is the mind that sees a sunrise as if for the first time, every time. It is the mind that listens to another person without the filter of past judgments. To maintain a beginner's mind is to stay fresh, to stay curious, and to recognize that there is always more to learn, always a deeper way to see. It prevents our wisdom from becoming stale and rigid. So the journey we have taken together is not one that leads to a final conclusion. It is an initiation into a way of living. It is the cultivation of a set of skills and qualities that allow us to navigate the river of life with more grace, wisdom, and love. The ultimate expression of this journey is found in the Bodhisattva ideal, the being who, on the verge of final liberation, makes a great vow to return to the world again and again, in countless forms, until all beings are free from suffering. The journey inward to find ourselves ultimately leads us back outward, into a life of boundless compassion and selfless service. The path is not about becoming someone special. It is about becoming fully, wonderfully, and ordinarily human, and in doing so, discovering that our own heart is large enough to embrace the entire world. We have traveled a long and winding path together, a journey that began in the familiar territory of human suffering. We looked directly into the consuming fire of our anger, felt the heavy weight of the chains of our attachments, and stood face to face with the paralyzing shadow of our fears. We saw how a life lived in the fog of ignorance, a life on autopilot, is a life of quiet desperation. But we did not stay there. We discovered that we have within us a timeless and trustworthy guide, the simple, miraculous anchor of the breath. By returning to it, we found the gateway to the present moment, the only place where life truly unfolds. From that place of mindfulness, we began to see the world and ourselves with new eyes. We saw the profound truth of impermanence, learning to dance with the river of change rather than fighting its current. We investigated the very nature of the self and found not a solid, separate entity, but a wondrous, interconnected process, freeing us from the prison of the ego. This wisdom naturally opened the heart, allowing the flowers of compassion, forgiveness, and joy to bloom. We learned to tend to the garden of our mind, to find peace in the midst of storms, and to walk a middle way of exquisite balance. We saw that our true nature is not one of isolation, but of profound interbeing, woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. If there is one truth to carry with you from our time together, let it be, this peace is not a destination. It is not a distant shore you will one day arrive at when all your problems are solved. When the world is finally arranged to your liking, peace is not something to be found on the outside. It is a capacity of your own heart and mind. It is a seed that is already planted within you, waiting to be cultivated. It is an inner sanctuary that you can learn to access at any time, in any place. Regardless of the storms that may be raging around you, the entire spiritual path is simply the process of learning to find the doorway to this inner refuge and remembering, again and again, how to open it. And so, you are left not with a destination, but with a beginning. You have the map, you have the tools, and you have the innate capacity to make this journey your own. You do not need to become someone else. You only need to become more fully and consciously yourself. The key to this sanctuary is in your hands. It has always been there. The journey of 1,000 miles. The entire path to peace and freedom begins with a single, simple step. And that step, that entire journey, can begin right now. With your very next conscious breath, breathe in and know that you are breathing in. Breathe out and know that you are breathing out. You are already home. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free.